Championship Wrestling, bringing you great wrestling action, sanctioned by the NWA, National Wrestling Alliance.
After a while.
NWA World Championship Wrestling, August 1st, 1987. Showed clips of Paul Jones and his army attacking Jimmy Garvin. And they went to the studio, where the announcers ran their mouths for a while about how great the Horsemen were. Jim Cornette came in for a promo. He had found Stars and Stripes themed gear for his tennis racket and sunglasses. So we talked about how the Midnight Express was America's most patriotic team, and then we got a match.
Yeah, the opening segment before the Cornette promo, they always open with like a 10-second clip of something, and there's no announcers talking about it, and it's just stuff happening. I had absolutely no idea what was happening in this opening segment. There was a brawl, Jimmy Garvin was down, I'm trying to figure out what's going on, and they go to the announcers. Thankfully, they explained it later. Cornette's promo, this promo and the one that he did a little bit later, he had his USA sunglasses on. He mentioned his grandfather, Ulysses Cornette. He's ranting and raving about how patriotic him and the team are. He continued this later. And all I could think was, he has no material. Like, they gave him nothing. And so he had to come up with something to talk about for like 3 straight minutes on national television. And that's what he came up with. Like, we're past the 4th of July. Mm-hmm. The 4th of July is over. They're not going for the U.S. tag team titles.
They own them.
They're not going for like the U.S. Singles championship. He just had to rant for 10 minutes.
Yes.
It's a very different time back then.
He probably stopped at a gas station somewhere, found these sunglasses for, in the 80s, probably 50 cents. And went to work.
Yeah, but where'd he get the tennis racket gimmick?
That I don't know. Maybe he just carries a wide selection of racket covers around with him and puts on whatever's appropriate.
Sure.
Maybe there's a Halloween-themed one waiting to come out. So we got the Midnight Express versus George South and Cougar J. Cornette is running down every babyface team in the world, and then, of course, says, out of all of them, the one that deserves a title shot next would be the Mulkeys.
I mean, technically, they did have that win on TV a while ago.
I suppose that's true.
We never saw a follow-up to.
He's talking about how no team can beat the Midnight Express. No team can get the job done. He points out South and Jay, they're not doing the job, though they will be in a minute. I laughed. Midnight City goofy move called the Chiropractic Crunch, which I have never seen before and hopefully never again since, or never will again. And then they hit a flapjack for the win.
You know, Jim Cornette and the Young Bucks have feuded for a long time. This fucking Midnight Express. They're the Young Bucks of 1987. They're just in there doing a million moves.
Yeah.
Like every week they've got to make up some new wacky move. Now granted, they don't do the same move 50 times in every match. They don't have like a super kick. But we had a flapjack. We had the Chiropractic Crunch, which he gave about 3 names to the same move. Just a bunch of moves.
Yeah.
Like the Midnight Express love just doing moves.
Random top rope dives.
Yeah, they do something off the top and then just keep going.
Yeah.
Man, totally exposing the business. But they were great.
Not the word I would use, but okay.
Then there's George South. Obviously, they love George South, the workers, because he's really good.
Yeah.
Cougar J absolutely sucks. They worked with George South for a while. They got Cougar J in. They got him the fuck out. They kept working with George South. Then they beat him. I don't know why George South was never a bigger star. Like, I guess I never saw him do interviews. Maybe he was a terrible interview, but he was a good worker. He didn't look horrible. I mean, you look at up and down this roster, all of the jobbers that look terrible, even some of the stars that look terrible. I don't know why. It's a mystery. I thought he was pretty good.
So then they did a promo after the match, where Cornette said this had not been an impressive win because everybody was already impressed with them. Funniest thing about this to me is he's running his mouth. They only had one... excuse me. The air in here is a little thick. They only
sure
had
is.
one pair of sunglasses.
It's very thick up here.
And we're just passing it back and forth, the sunglasses. So that's all they had. He ran his mouth and he promised to win the World Tag Team titles, and that was it.
I mean, really, was Bobby Eaton like a super charismatic guy?
No, nor did he have a tremendous body.
No. So why couldn't George South have been one half of a tag team with a guy with charisma? Or another guy with no charisma, but like a good manager?
Like Paul Jones.
Yeah. Sad.
Jimmy Garvin versus Thunderfoot number 2.
This is the beginning of a feud between the Garvins and the Thunderfoots.
Thunder feet.
Thunderfoots. I made sure to say that.
You were adamant.
We have learned from finding Bigfoot that it's foots, not feet.
So this applies to all foot-named creatures.
Yeah, a big foot. I always thought a numerous big foot would be big feet.
Sure.
But apparently now in the lexicon, it's Bigfoots. Therefore, Thunderfoot number 1 and Thunderfoot number 2 are the Thunderfoots, not the Thunderfeet.
I'm trying to think of any other foot name I can put to this, but that's pretty much it.
Yes.
Big and Thunder. Well, this Thunderfoot got way more offense than he should have against Jimmy Garvin. Jimmy was doing like technical counter wrestling, like small packages and stuff.
Well, the one thing I noted is Jimmy Garvin is getting better.
Sure.
That's what happens when you feud with Ric Flair, and you end up doing a shitload of matches.
Yes.
You end up better.
He's getting better. It was funny, they're talking about him as an offensive wrestler, as Thunderfoot number 2 is beating him up and Jimmy's looking for counters. And finally, Jimmy won with a brainbuster. Jimmy's brainbusters are always an adventure. Like, I don't think he ever really kills the guy, but you're never quite sure just how he's going to land. And this time, Thunderfoot number 2 came down essentially on the side of his head, which, if you have a head and a neck, you can imagine how much it would hurt to land on the side of it.
That's true. He kind of brought him down and then pulled his head sideways, which I think looked even worse than anything else.
Yeah.
But you got to think about Garvin's career. Like, he spent a long time working with the Freebirds,
mm-hmm.
and then he spent a lot of time working with the Road Warriors.
Sure.
And so, when you think about it, he comes to this company, and, I mean, who was he working with? And then he spent some time working with Ric Flair, and then he's better.
Wasn't he in Texas for a while, too, with the Von Erichs?
Yeah, that's what I said, the Von Erichs.
Yeah, and working with them is basically defending yourself.
Yeah, you're not doing, like, great technical wrestling.
No, you're just trying to survive, yes.
You're not doing great technical wrestling with the Road Warriors.
No. No, it is true. Ric Flair was the best guy he had worked with up to this point, and probably ever again. That's a fact. So he cuts a promo, says Ric Flair had tried to break his leg, and since then the Horsemen had been coming after him. Now Paul Jones and his army were coming after them. They showed the clip from the beginning of the show with more context. It was Jimmy and Manny Fernandez in a singles match, and Jimmy hit a schoolboy when Paul Jones attacked for the DQ. And Paul Jones, and I believe Ivan Koloff and Manny went after the broken leg, tried to re-break it, and Ronnie Garvin showed up with a chair to clean the house. And Jimmy promised his leg was feeling fine. He kissed Precious, and he left.
Yeah, it was weird because a long time ago when the Horsemen broke Dusty's leg, I mean, they basically did what they did to Jimmy Garvin right here. It was like a legendary angle. Now Jimmy Garvin gets his leg. It was like a knee drop off the middle rope to the dude's leg. He's fine.
The plans change. Nikita Koloff versus David Isley.
I should add we got that same Ric Flair video that I think we seriously have now seen like 50 times. Still don't know what it is.
It's just a Flair hype video. It's just they've showed it over and over again, sometimes 2 or 3 times in the same show. So Nikita no-sold some stuff like The Undertaker, hit a shoulder tackle and the sickle for the win. David Crockett was giddy about Nikita taking this man's head off.
He begged to see it again.
David Crockett is seriously the most sadistic man in the world. Rock and Roll Express got a promo. This is so awesome. First of all, they had apparently just been on the LA, a West Coast tour, because Ricky's out there in an LA Dodgers shirt. Robert's out there in a shirt that just says Los Angeles, but you look close and you realize it's the Mexican flag with Los Angeles in it.
Yeah. He's a man of the people. All people.
So how many times have we said in Rock and Roll Express promos, why don't they just let Ricky do all the talking? Well, they listened. Ricky did all the talking here.
Not only did he do all of the talking here, but this was the first promo with Ricky on this show. They did another promo later, and they didn't even bother bringing Robert out that time.
No.
They finally figured it out.
Yes. So Ricky's got a promo about how they were the world champions and they would fight to defend the belts, not for the money, not for the glory, but because it was an honor for them to represent all the people. And Gibson left without saying a word.
Not a word, but he did something with his hand.
Keep that in mind.
Yeah, it's foreshadowing.
Nikita cut a promo.
Please tell me you understood this one.
Parts of it.
I'm usually pretty good at understanding Nikita Koloff promos, but this one, I know one sentence. I got one sentence out of this. and that was, "I'm not afraid of you, Lex Luger. Are you afraid of me?" Other than that, he may as well have been speaking Russian.
He had Shivani read a list of some of the top heels in the company, and I was able to put together, this was a list of men Nikita had defended the title against when he was U.S. champion, proving he was a fighting champion taking on the toughest competition. Then he said Lex Luger had not defended the belt against anyone, including himself. So he wanted a title shot against Lex.
Lex didn't defend the title against Lex?
Well, against Nikita.
I see.
Yeah.
I was hoping that he'd said against himself.
Well, to be honest, I can't prove he didn't. But, yes, he wants a title shot against Lex, and he's not afraid of him. Barry Windham versus Dave Spearman. Here's everything I wrote. Barry beat him up and won with a lariat.
I wrote down that Tony was amazed that Barry was tall and that he had a lot of moves. And meanwhile, he's getting pushed as the Western States Heritage Champion. I was like, God, nothing ever fucking changes. They found a guy who's tall and does a lot of moves, and now they got to do something.
And he has good hair.
Yeah. So, in fact, Barry won. He did a bunch of moves, as had been promised, and he won with the lariat, which is almost the same thing as a sickle, except the babyface leaves his feet, I guess. Although, I suppose that, Ivan or Nikita's a babyface as well, but 2 finishes, 2 straight matches, exact same move.
Mm-hmm. Well, we used to have 2 or 3 guys doing the Brainbuster on the show, too.
That is true.
Yeah. Just because there's no one built fences around moves here.
I hadn't thought of that term in a long time, but yes, there was no fence building around moves.
Around moves. So, let's see. Barry cut a promo.
He mentioned Eddie Gilbert.
Yes, as the UWF continues to kind of melt in here. Plugged a West Coast tour, including stops in Seattle and Portland. Maybe he went to Cannon Beach.
He may have.
He did plug title defenses against Arn.
Actually, he may have been to Astoria.
Sure.
There used to be a lot of wrestling over there at Astoria.
That's right. Plug title defenses against Arn Anderson and Eddie Gilbert. And there's a point here where I thought he had just lost track of where he was, and it turns out Arn had come out and they were shouting at each other.
Yeah.
So Barry issued an open challenge, said he had a date in Denver on the 17th, and challenged Arn to come fight him there.
No, what he said was, if you show up, I'm going to teach you a wrestling lesson.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, what lesson is Barry Windham going to teach Arn Anderson? How to be tall.
And have good hair.
Sure, I guess.
These are things Barry
Those
can
are
teach
2
him.
things that Arn does not have.
No.
He does not have good hair, nor is he tall.
No. So we had Tully and Arn versus Keith Patterson and Dexter Westcott.
I got to put over this Keith Patterson. So we all know that Dexter Westcott is just fucking he's hideous.
Yeah.
There's just few jobbers. By the way, I was thinking about this here. So early in the show, I forget the match I was thinking. I think it was the Cougar J match, because I just can't stand Cougar J either. And I'm thinking, we get the exact same jobbers on every single show. And it's been that way for years. And I was thinking, can we get some new jobbers? And this is also foreshadowing. I was thinking this at the beginning of the show. Can we please get some new jobbers? I've been watching the show now. We're going on 2 or 3 years total. Like, when did we start? 85?
I think the end of 85, yeah.
85. We're now in 87, so whatever. So maybe a year and a half, 2 years. But it's like the same guys.
Yes.
There needs to be like a developmental territory for jobbers.
Absolutely.
For this promotion here.
Yes.
I'm just begging to see somebody.
Actually, we're joking about it, but there's such a big part of the show, it makes total sense.
I'm not joking.
Yeah.
There are there's like 5, 7, 8 jobber matches on every show. Okay, we need new geeks. Well, we got Keith Patterson here. He's a new geek. I don't think we've seen him before. He's a young black fella. He was fucking great. He tagged in. There was one embarrassing spot. He tagged in a House of Fire. He runs at Tully. Tully just knees him in the gut and beats his ass.
Well, even that was great, though.
Yeah.
Because he's a jobber. He's supposed to be embarrassed. He tags in. Dexter's been going the whole match. And in comes this short, skinny guy we've never seen before. And he's a House of Fire. He starts throwing rights and lefts to the belly. And Tully no-sells them all and hits like one knee. And Dexter shouts, "Oh, God!" and goes down. He was perfect.
Keith.
I was like, Keith. Thank you. Keith, yes.
Yeah,
it was perfect.
I must put over Keith Patterson.
It was perfect.
He was pretty good. Mm-hmm. He took a great beating. He took great bumps, and his selling was great.
Absolutely.
They kept this guy in the ring like the whole time because Dexter Westcott sucks.
Right. And Keith Patterson's better.
He was much better.
He was also black, which means, of course, Tully at one point had to tell him to shine my shoes, boy.
Oh, man.
It was the 80s. So they eventually pinned Keith Patterson with a DDT and a gourd buster, hit Westcott with 1-2 just because he sucks. And they go out to cut a promo.
I predict, by the way, that we will be seeing a lot more of Keith Patterson.
Well, I hope so.
If this guy didn't get fucking rehired after this show, that's why this company went out of business.
So they go out to cut a promo. JJ starts. JJ explains the Horsemen all have fancy cars. Jaguars, BMWs, Porsches. Then he says, people with money never pay cash for anything. They use other people's money to buy stuff. But then they have payments. And they had so many payments because of their car bills, they needed to go out and win championships and win matches. So JJ's promo was about how the Horsemen are in debt up to their eyeballs.
That's right.
And up against the wall and desperate for money.
Yeah, this was. I did not believe him when he would talk about the Horsemen's wealth after this particular.
Did he think this through?
Clearly not.
I'm almost positive it's the opposite. I believe rich people pay cash for everything, and poor people are the ones who have thousands in payments every month.
Well, a rich person can pay on credit, but then pay the credit off at the end of the month. Then they get miles on their card.
I guess so.
Or their airline miles.
Yes.
But the point of this is, the way he described it, these guys are fucking living hand to mouth.
Yeah, they're fucked.
Like, if they don't win a title next week, they're all of a sudden in deep trouble.
One injury, and they're selling that Jag.
Yeah. Which, I mean, probably was the way the Horsemen lived.
I mean, that's true.
It was the way the promotion was living.
I'm sure that's true, too.
He's probably... Maybe this was like a promo about the state of the company.
He's hoping they would get the message.
Yeah.
So it's Arn's turn. He calls out Barry Windham for the Western States title. He calls out the Rock and Roll Express for the tag titles. It's really not much to say. And then Tully takes over. And as I say those words, a bag in this room just falls down in glee. Tully begins by burying Robert Gibson for not being able to talk. So you saw Robert coming out earlier, didn't say a word, just did that thing with his hand.
That's what he said. He can't talk a lick, were his exact words.
Yes.
And he's not wrong.
No. Then he has the camera look out over the crowd. Says you can tell the Rock and Roll Express fans because they're dressed like shit. They're in cheap shorts. They're in cheap t-shirts. You can tell the Horsemen fans because it's these half dozen guys who showed up in full suit and tie and sunglasses. And there's a group of young Republicans in the front row that all stand up in their suits and sunglasses holding up the Four Horsemen sign. And they became the stars of the show when all was said and done. So Tully's putting over these fans, how great they are, how classy they are, how proud he is to have fans like this. Have we mentioned that Tully was great?
Tully was awesome.
Tully was unbelievably great.
He was so great.
So they go to commercial. They come back. Dusty comes out. He is, in fact, in jeans and a t-shirt.
This guy's got his jeans on. He's got his t-shirt tucked into his boots, his baseball cap, his sunglasses.
ZZ Top baseball cap.
Talks about, first off, he says, very few men can even say they have been the world heavyweight champion. This was the beginning of a monumental change in my outlook here on this program, as we'll get to here in a moment. He talks about how cherished this championship is. Very few men ever win it in their career. Even fewer win it multiple times. And then these trolls in the front row, they get on Dusty's nerves.
Dusty was gotten to.
He was totally gotten to here. It was so embarrassing. It was so embarrassing. He says, you guys are what's known as pretty boys. We call people like you pretty boys. You're not like the common people, like the rest of these fans and myself and my parents. He starts talking about Luger being a pretty boy, and this pretty boy is going to enter a new world feuding with Dusty over the U.S. title. And then, of course, it's Dusty. So he's got to tell you how rich he is. He says, first off, he says, Luger, you think you're rich and famous, but being rich and famous is a fluke. I don't know what he's talking about.
I don't know.
Then he says he's rich and famous. And he says he's so rich that he could buy Lex Luger with the twist of a pen. What?
I don't know.
So he says, Luger, you're the total package, I'm a legend. And then he turns to the pretty boys in the front row. They're in their suits. They're holding up the four fingers. And fucking Dusty Rhodes says, I got one word for you guys. I got two words for you guys. You suck. And he goes backstage.
Yes.
I was like, man, oh man. They got you.
They totally got
Boy,
him.
did they get you.
Did you mention where Dusty said, I made $500,000 in the past 3 weeks?
Oh.
Did you mention where he said, and this is a quote, I am the most talented individual in the country?
Yeah.
That's what he said. Not in wrestling.
In the country.
In the country.
Yeah. Willie Nelson. I mean, the list goes on and on. It's the first guy
Eddie
I thought
Murphy.
of. Yeah.
It was the 80s.
Can you imagine if Twitter had been around in this era and Dusty in 1987 had Twitter? What a nightmare it would be.
Oh, that's a horrible idea.
Oh, my God.
Lord almighty. Sean Royal of the New Breed versus Ricky Nelson. I'm happy we did this. Because it seems like every time the New Breed came out, we were confused about which was Sean Royal and which was Chris Champion.
Yeah, this guy was definitely Sean Royal.
Sean Royal's the tall one.
Sean Royal is the guy with the weird body and the fake lats.
Yes.
Who walks around, and if you look at his body and his haircut, which is kind of mohawk, he kind of looks like a skinny Chuck Liddell. Am I the only one?
I would say Chuck Liddell's a skinny Sean Royal.
Everybody go back and check this out. He's a skinny Chuck Liddell. No, he's much ganglier.
He's got the narrow hips but broader shoulders.
Sure, and he pulls his lats way back.
He does do that.
He's weird looking.
So he beat up Ricky Nelson like a poor little fool. He won bell to bell, had a top rope knee drop for the win.
A horrible knee drop. And then, I think it was Tony goes, so we asked Sean Royal where his partner in the New Breed was. And Royal said, why, he's right here. So, they're time travelers, and they can be invisible.
I see.
Is what I got out of this.
I see. Well, I'm happy I didn't catch that. That would have annoyed me.
What are you talking about? Their gimmick is they're time travelers.
That's true.
He's trying not to break kayfabe.
Paul Jones, my voice. This room was not good for me, man. Paul Jones and Ivan Koloff cut a promo. Paul Jones is talking about the Road Warriors. Says, you guys think you're so big and you're so bad. You've got your international tag titles, but let me tell you something, Road Warriors. Pigs don't know pigs stink.
That's what he said.
And he pauses. He lets this profound statement sink in. Like we're all going to just nod in agreement. It's true. Pigs don't know pigs stink. He goes on about how Ivan and Vladimir Pietrov are going to take the Warriors' international tag titles.
They're going to take the Road Warriors titles.
Yes.
He has to make sure he bangs that goddamn table every time.
With a riding crop. Ivan calls out the Garvins for good measure, and that's that.
I love me some Paul Jones.
He's phenomenal in his badness.
And he's a very wise man. Pigs don't know that pigs stink. Should go on your tombstone.
No, should not. We had our second Garvin versus Foot match of the night. Ron Garvin versus Thunderfoot number 1.
You ever notice that Thunderfoot number 2 always works first?
It does seem that way, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And they never actually team up.
That's true.
Even here, where it seems they could naturally do Garvins versus Thunderfoots.
Almost makes you think maybe they're the same guy.
Stranger things have happened. So they're doing this match. It's a squash. It's unremarkable. And then the finish is...
This finish was amazing.
Ronnie sells a bit. Thunderfoot whips him corner to corner. He charges with a boot, but Ronnie Garvin dodges. So Thunderfoot goes like in between the turnbuckles. It does not hit the top turnbuckle. It doesn't hit the middle turnbuckle. It kind of goes in between them. It just hits air. And this causes him to fall down.
Caused him to take a back bump.
Yes.
I don't know why.
I don't either. This made no sense. Like, this defied physics. And then Ronnie punched him and won.
I liked it.
It was fine. They go to break and they come back and Ronnie cuts a promo.
All right, I got to talk about this. So, Ronnie does the big promo. Says Flair's an imbecile because he's knocked him out a half dozen times across the country. Says he has always wanted to be the best in wrestling. and he's held many titles during his career, but there's one title that he's never held, the World Heavyweight Championship, and that's the one that he wants. And he claims over the last decade, only 2 men have been talked about as champion, Ric Flair and Dusty Rhodes. And over the last few decades, only a handful of men have ever held that title. Now, first off, he's not entirely correct, because the 80s, you had Tommy Rich, Harley Race, Flair, Dusty, Kerry Von Erich all officially were champions.
What? Yeah.
And Jack Veneno and Carlos Colon were unofficial champions.
If you paid attention to what he said, he said only 2 men. I forget what the exact words, but they were only they were the only 2 men who were talked about, or 2 men have dominated the title scene.
Dominated may have been.
He never said only 2 men have held it.
Okay.
He just said the other 4 or 5 don't count.
Okay. But the point of this was the promo where I finally understood why everybody was so upset about Ronnie Garvin winning the world title. I have been such a fan of Ronnie Garvin, and for weeks and weeks and months, I have been saying, what the hell was wrong with Ronnie Garvin winning this title? It was not until this promo that it really hit me that you got to go back and look at this in the context of the 80s. There were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, basically 5 guys that held the title in the 80s up to this point. 3 of them were like really big stars. The Kerry one was quick. The Tommy Rich one was like 4 days, if that. Mm-hmm. It's done 3 guys. He was going to be like next.
Yeah.
Ron fucking Garvin?
Yes.
It finally hit me like a ton of bricks.
Yes.
Like, this is not 2017 where fucking everybody gets his stupid title. Everybody gets his title multiple times. There's multiple versions of it in WWE. Like, Ken Anderson was in line for the title till something got fucked up. I mean, the list goes on and on of geeks that have won this title.
Sheamus has won many world championships.
Sheamus has won... You could name anybody off the top of your head, they've probably been the world champion. Ron Garvin... I get it now. I still love Ron Garvin. I still think he's awesome. I mean, in some ways, I don't have a problem with it. But I fully understand now why it was such a scandal that Ron Garvin beat Ric Flair for the World Heavyweight title in 1987.
He was not ever on the level of a Harley Race or a Ric Flair or a Dusty Rhodes.
I mean, he was great in his own way. I'd put the title on him today.
Yes, please.
But this was 87.
No, you were not wrong. My takeaway from this, which I guess is similar, as he's glossing over those guys who didn't count, the Kerry Von Erich and the Tommy Rich, the way he described it, and granted, maybe he thought he'd be champion for a year, but by his own definition, his own upcoming title reign doesn't count.
Well, he had it longer than Tommy Rich.
He did.
And I think Kerry Von Erich. I'm almost positive. He had it for 2 months.
Yeah, I don't know. Definitely longer than Rich. I don't know about Von Erich. I'd have to look that up. So he promised that one day Ric Flair would be out there cutting a promo and he'd be hanging his head and he'd have no title because Garvin was gunning for him.
Well, goddamn, he was right.
He was. So they always do these bits when they go to commercial where they show like a clip from the prior match in slow motion and text unfolds one letter at a time. And it's usually like, the best wrestling is right here, or the champ is up next, or something. This time it just says, stretch a bit, but stay tuned.
Hey.
Apparently they're really worried.
There were some long commercial breaks back there.
Fans might be getting bed sores 40 minutes into the show if they didn't get up and stretch a little. So Flair comes out for a promo. Head is not hanging. He's still world champion. He also called out the fans in suits. Called out Ronnie Garvin. Said Ronnie Garvin was great, but he was no Ric Flair. He wasn't man enough to beat Ric Flair. And as great as Garvin was, he was going to retire him from this business. And he talked about the show in Denver, which must have been a big show. He says he vowed to wipe Denver off the map like the New York Giants had done in the Super Bowl that year.
Flair does awesome promos. Are you aware of this?
I've heard.
Yeah.
Lex Luger versus Alan Martin. People go crazy when Lex Luger calls for the torture rack. Have you heard of this?
Yeah, I couldn't believe it. I mean, they're the Horsemen. I mean, they had the Horsemen fans in the front row, but...
Well, it helped. But
the rack is always over.
The rack is amazingly over.
And I don't know why. He lifts the guy up and shakes him.
Yeah.
Who gives a shit?
Don't know.
Everybody.
It would be one thing if it was the Giant or something in there. Alan Martin was much smaller than Lex Luger. This is not a very impressive feat. Lex squashed him. He won with a rack. Everyone went crazy.
I love Lex squashing him with holds. Like, Lex decided he was going to be a technical wrestler this afternoon.
Well, technical, like
hammer locks and shit.
bear hugs.
Yeah.
It was not very good. So they go to break, and then Dylan and Lex cut a promo. Dylan calls out the junior executives in the crowd. Which I love that line. He starts talking about how he has taken out a $2 million insurance policy on Lex's future. Points out there are no scars on Lex's face. His face is perfect. His body is perfect. His athletic potential is unmatched. He's just a fountain of money waiting to be made. And then he starts going off about how $2 million wasn't enough. It may have been a $5 million or even an $8.6 million insurance policy.
Yeah, he's heard various numbers, he says.
Yes, and then he finally tells us the crowd will never know what the insurance policy actually is. And then he stops, and he turns to Lex and says, Lex, I got carried away. I got a little upset. I apologize. And he steps aside.
Yeah.
Like he had taken Lex's interview time while they're going this rant about insurance. So Lex...
Tell me what the fuck was going on here.
I love this show.
Lex, what's going on with the dating game?
Lex is plugging... He's not plugging his title defenses. He's not plugging the tour. He's not even plugging the Denver show. Lex is plugging the dating game in Philadelphia. He says, a lot of people have asked why I would bother to do a dating game in a city like Philadelphia, which is not known for having good-looking women. And the fact of the matter is, I'm going to go into Philly. I'm going to take a very ordinary woman, and I'm going to give her a chance at the night of her life.
So it's still coming.
It's still coming.
Okay.
As far as I can tell.
I was a little confused watching this. It sounded to me like he was just ending it. Like there was going to be no payoff. There goddamn sure better be a payoff to the Lex Luger.
I hope there's a payoff. I hope he picks Ronnie Garvin and drag again. So finally he says Nikita Koloff is now at the bottom of the pile, and he wants to face a true legend like Dusty Rhodes, and he calls out Dusty for a while. Says the movie and TV producers are coming after him, not Dusty, which I'm sure was true.
Well, it's funny you should mention that because he's saying he's talking about roles in movies and TV, and he says nobody's busting down Dusty's door for those roles. And I thought, well, if they're targeting you for a role, then they're probably not also targeting Dusty for the same role.
That's true.
Right?
Yeah.
However, depending on the movie, technically, there should be interest in both men for roles. And in fact, there should be more interest in Dusty for more roles. Because Dusty is a fat common man. Think of all of the roles you could play in a movie. A guy like Luger is going to be pigeonholed. Right?
I would, I guess I see the point you're making.
If you take any famous movie in the world, let's just, since we talked about the other day, Lord of the Rings, you need someone to play Gandalf. Dusty is a more likely than Lex Luger to play that role, right? Pick anybody that's not like a superhero.
I'm so sad it's too late because I would pay so much money to watch Dusty Rhodes as Gandalf. You fools!
Any role in any famous movie. Unless it's like, a superhero. Like, just pick a famous movie. Pick any movie.
See, it was the 80s. It was the era of Arnold and Stallone.
Sure, if you're
Lundgren.
looking for Arnold, Stallone, or Dolph Lundgren, you're going to go for Luger.
Yeah.
But for the 500 other roles in 500 other movies, it's more likely to be Dusty.
Sure.
Right?
There's a lot of fat guys in movies, it's true.
Exactly.
If you're making the Goonies...
If you're making the Big Lebowski and you need Walter, you're not getting Lex Luger.
No.
He's not going to be the dude.
No.
He's fucking not going to be Donnie.
No.
Okay, thank you.
He'd have been one of the nihilists.
He could have been.
Yeah.
He's not going to be the other Lebowski.
No. So, up to this point, this had been a show. There had been some good stuff. Not a lot of bad stuff, but it had not been a very memorable show. Thank God for Dale LaPerouse.
Dale LaPerouse.
I believe that's how you pronounce this.
I asked at the beginning of the show for some new jobbers, and they fucking delivered.
The wrestling gods heard your prayers.
Never has my request been delivered like it was on this show.
Dale LaPerouse. First of all, for sure, the worst wrestler of all time of the week.
He had to be straight out of some porn.
He was tall. Like, maybe Barry Windham was the only taller guy in the show. I guess Lex. He was very tall. He was very skinny. He had a mustache and body hair, but no tan.
Oh, my God. It's disgusting.
Just this gangly earthworm out there. Clearly had never run the ropes before.
Clearly never been in a ring.
Clearly had never taken bumps before. Just unfathomably bad.
Yeah.
Like, everything he did, we were, like, grabbing our faces and screaming about how terrible it was. And Ivan's just a pro. Ivan's just doing the best he can to get through there with this guy. So, Dale LaPerouse fucked up every single fucking thing they did.
Everything.
Everything was done to its minimum capability. And Ivan hit him with the Russian hammer and pinned him.
It was weird because when it was over, I hoped to never see this guy again, but also see him in every match.
I would watch a Dale LaPerouse highlight tape.
Okay, so a very quick glance here at the internet. He does wrestle again.
Yes.
So I see there's a Lex Luger Dale LaPerouse match.
Lex is going to do the torture rack, and people are going to go crazy as he lifts an earthworm.
We've got Larry Zbyszko, Al Perez versus Gary Phelps and Dale LaPerouse.
Wow, that means he's around for a couple of years then.
Yeah, there are matches. I mean, this guy comes back.
Excellent.
Hopefully he gets better. Actually, hopefully not.
Hopefully it gets worse.
Yeah. It's astounding how bad this guy was.
Ricky Morton came out for another promo. He had changed his shirt. He called out Tully Blanchard, said, "I could stand on my billfold and jump over your head."
Okay. Still better than a Robert promo.
It was better than a Robert promo. Now, it's time for the main event.
Okay, I got to tell you something here. You go ahead.
I just want to say, earlier on the show, I did not note when, but they were talking about what's coming up. Said later on the show, we will have the debut of the White Raider.
The White Raider.
White Raider. That was what was advertised.
So this Ricky Morton promo ends, and on the screen, the following words appear.
He's not making this up.
Ralph Rubio versus White Raider. My child is crying right now.
She saw these graphics too.
I'm sure you can hear her.
Yeah.
She is as infuriated as I am that there was no match. They did an angle. We're supposed to believe that the main event of the show was Ralph Rubio versus the White Raider.
Forget that.
I presume it was the standby match.
We're supposed to believe that Ralph Rubio and the White Raider are men who exist.
No, that's the thing. These fucking guys better be on the show next week.
Not a chance.
There's no way that they can tease this match and not deliver.
I guarantee you they made these up.
I need to see this match.
They made these up. They had this White Raider thing planned. They said, who the hell are we going to put him in the ring with? Ralph Rabowski? No. Rillings? No. Rubio. Ralph Rubio.
I'm Googling it right now. This goddamn match better come up.
I'll wait.
Wait a second.
Oh.
What show did we watch? What was the date?
August 1st, 1997.
Damn it! God damn it!
That was it?
No, I see it here, but it looks like... Oh, man. Oh, man. Yeah, I don't think we're going to ever get it.
One of the great dream matches of all time, lost to the ages.
It's terrible.
We shall never know who was the better man, Ralph Rubio or the White Raider.
I got to find out who the White Raider was. I mean, he's got to debut at some point.
It's a figment of somebody's imagination.
Vinny, you can't say the guy's going to debut and then he never debuts.
Like, by the standards of pro wrestling, he's fake.
God damn it.
So, we did not get Ralph Rubio versus the White Raider. The graphics came up on the screen, and then Tully Blanchard was at the podium for whatever reason, and Ricky Morton just walked up and slapped him in the face. He hit the ring and dared Tully to come fight. And Tully is not the kind of guy who's going to turn down a challenge. So they hit the ring and they had a brawl. Tully tried to flee, but Gibson was there to throw him back in. Gibson just absolutely being Ricky Morton's lackey here. And then JJ tried to interfere, but Gibson made sure that didn't happen either. So it was Ricky Morton versus Tully Blanchard one-on-one in this ring. And a referee came out, so I guess it was a match, and maybe even a championship match. And they were brawling, and Ricky hit a crossbody, and that was the end of the show. So we don't know who won or who was the White Raider.
God damn it.
Last 5 minutes of the show was awesome.
God damn it. You know, there is a page on the internet that reads Ralph Rubio versus White Raider Rivalry.
Really?
Which got me very excited. But when you click on it, it only takes you to that show and that build match. So it doesn't look like they actually had a rivalry. We're never going to find out who this man was. I need to get like Cornette on the show. I got to find out what's going on here. I can't believe they'd make this up. This is professional wrestling.
It's got to be based in reality. Got to be believable.
That's right.
So let's get funky like a monkey.
What's the date?
August 8th, 1987.
August 8, 1987. All right.
8/8/87.
8/8/87.
Mm-hmm. A long show, 90 minutes this week, so we'll have a lot to talk about. Open with clips of the Ricky Morton, Tully Blanchard brawl from last week. The opener was Sean Royal versus George South. So first of all, David Crockett was mumbling so badly that he made himself laugh, if you can imagine such a thing. This was not a squash match. George South controlled the offense for several minutes. Royal took over, and you figure, okay, he'll do his stuff and win. And then South made a big comeback, and even got a near fall. Shivani outright said, you would not expect South to stick with Royal, but he's right there with him. And then finally, Royal ducked a body press, hit his knee drop for the win. A good little wrestling match, and the fans were so pleasantly surprised, they all applauded.
Yeah, I don't know why this match had to go so long. It wasn't terrible, but I mean, it was like a 10-minute Sean Royal versus George South match.
As a match, it was good.
Yeah.
I don't know why they decided to have him. There were a couple of here matches on this, so they had me scratching my head. This was the first one. But if you just watch it as a wrestling match, it was good.
Well, the weird thing about it was, it's not like, here's what was weird. It'd be one thing if it were, what the hell was the name of that team? Not the Techno Team 2000.
The New Breed.
The New Breed. It'd be one thing if this was like a showcase for the New Breed and they were trying to get him over. Like, Sean Royal was there alone. His partner wasn't even there. It was one half of the New Breed going 10 minutes in a squash match. It wasn't even really a squash match. In like a somewhat competitive match against George South. It was just bizarre. I mean, I guess you got to fill 90 minutes, but that's a weird way to do it. The only highlight of this match to me was Sean Royal continually claiming that he had his hair pulled, even though his head is buzzed.
He has as much hair as your typical tennis ball.
Yeah.
But he insisted he still had his hair pulled. Ric Flair came out for a promo. He said he'd had a lot of fine women in his life, but the world title was his baby. Sleeping with that belt every night guaranteed him $1 million a year.
Yeah, he admitted that he slept with the championship belt.
Yes.
Only Ric Flair could get away with that.
He's also admitted that he likes to wear panties.
That's true.
He's just Ric Flair, everyone.
Like, if you think about just a random name like Diamond Dallas Page, since we're recapping like the mid-90s WCW, when he won the WCW World Heavyweight title, if Diamond Dallas Page had come on TV the next day on Nitro and told the world that he'd slept with the belt, like,
geek,
he'd never have lived it down.
Yeah.
But Ric Flair can come out here and he can talk about wearing panties, and he can talk about sleeping with the World Heavyweight title, and he manages to make it work. Which, by the way, is one of the reasons that promos are so terrible nowadays, because people look back and see stuff like this, and then they write a line like this for Roman Reigns, for example, who absolutely cannot pull it off.
No, that would be awful. Let's see. He added that he admitted that Ronnie Garvin had always given him problems because Ronnie had a more guts than brains style. It was very hard to make Ronnie quit, even when he should. But in the end, he promised he would retire Garvin, hop in a limo with two good-looking women, take a Learjet and his belt, take a Learjet somewhere, and satisfy a 24-year-old blonde.
So
he's very, very specific.
So he's getting two women to go with him to satisfy the 24-year-old blonde.
That's true. They may be the two women in the limo may just be his assistants for the real mission later that night.
I mean, that's what it sounds like to me.
Yeah, I hadn't put that much thought into it, but it makes sense.
I don't know if Ric Flair put too much thought into that part either.
He may not have either. Tully Blanchard and Arn Anderson versus Rocky King and Larry Stevens. So this match went on for a while, and I was hunting for things to talk about.
I got something.
Okay.
Larry Stevens is another one of those guys where he was totally fine in the ring. He didn't physically look any worse than Tully. In fact, he arguably had a better body and maybe better hair, if you're a fan of mullets. But Tully was a guy who was like a major star, and Larry Stevens never did anything. I always watch these shows, and sometimes I'm amazed by some of the guys who are over. Like, I'm not amazed at all that, Tully Blanchard was over. He was awesome. But I was watching Larry Stevens thinking, why wasn't this guy a bigger star? Why was he just a jobber? Now, of course, later Tully cut a promo, and I never heard a Larry Stevens promo, but my guess would be he's not as good as Tully. But it was kind of interesting to see, like, him and Rocky King were here, and they were, like, totally fine. But they were never anything, especially Larry Stevens.
So what I got out of this match, the announcers had plenty of time to plug the War Games rematch. Arn was wearing banana yellow gear, which was an interesting choice, to say the least. And then just when I was, like, out of ideas, Arn grabs one of these guys. I'm not sure who it was. Hits a spine buster, which is always beautiful. And then it's time for the gourd buster. And I think it's the second week in a row where he has just picked a man up and just dropped him right down onto his face. Violently.
Well, one of these jobbers was black and one of them was white. So you pretty much should have been able to tell which guy was which.
Poor Stevens, I wrote here.
Okay.
That's right. Yeah, the other's Rocky King. You were correct. I should know which is which. So Tully cuts his promo. I like Tully's promo starting about he complains about how the highways in Atlanta are never done. I suspect if we had a Georgia resident here, whatever highway he referenced is probably still not done.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure if Tully cut that same promo in 2017, nothing would have changed.
Mm-hmm. I say that based on the highways in Seattle and Tacoma, especially Tacoma, that are constantly under construction.
In Orlando.
Orlando is another good example. So he said he'd face the either member of the Rock and Roll Express for the TV title whenever they wanted. Then Arn says TV time on this station costs $65,000 a minute. So I'm going to get my money's worth.
$65,000 a minute.
Yes.
Okay. Obviously, this is bullshit, okay? That would be $5.9 million per episode and $300 million per year to run WCW Saturday Night.
Sure.
Now, granted, they were spending millions of dollars a year on television, and it led to them being sold, but I'm somewhat skeptical that they were spending $65,000 per minute. And if they were, why was that first match so goddamn long?
I suspect if there's any truth to this, and there may not be any truth to this at all, if there is any truth to this, he probably just looked at the ad rates, what they sold ad rates for, what a 30-second ad spot goes for, and just did the math based on that, which would be more than what Jim Crockett Promotions was paying to have their show on here, I'm sure. I'm
just telling you that if they spent like approximately $200,000 on the Rock and Roll Express versus Ed Franks and Gary Phelps, like they deserve to go out of business.
Well, yes, Arn said he'd been giving to the Horsemen for years. Now it was time for him to take the tag titles and prove he was as great as everyone else. Then they aired that one Flair video, and then, yes, the Rock and Roll Express wrestled both Ed Franks and Gary Phelps.
So who was the guy in the gray?
I'm so glad you brought this up.
How could I not?
First of all, well, that's true.
I mean, given what we do on this show, I would be. You may as well fire me if I don't bring this guy out.
Let's just start. Did the other guy ever tag in, or was this one guy in the ring the entire time?
I only remember the guy in the gray.
I'm almost positive the guy in the gray was the only one in the ring. Okay, so this was either Ed Franks or Gary Phelps.
Thanks, Vinny. I mean,
no, I have a point.
Okay.
I have a point. Don't cut me off.
Well, do you want me to recap what you just said?
I'm in the middle of a sentence, asshole.
God.
If you picture Ed Franks or Gary Phelps in your brain, I guarantee you the picture you have exactly matches this guy.
Okay. I'm glad I let you finish that sentence.
He looks exactly like what an Ed Franks or a Gary Phelps would look like.
Well, that's not true, because there was a Gary Phelps and an Ed Franks, and one of them looked horrendously worse than the other. And I need to know who it is.
How do you know? Because I only saw the one guy.
Well, this guy was unforgettable. And there's no way the guy on the apron could have been this bad. It's impossible.
So, some fashion advice. First of all, skinny fat guys should not wrestle bare-chested. If they must wrestle bare-chested, if they must wear tights, those tights should not be dingy gray.
Oh, my God.
And if they must be dingy gray, please make them long enough so your ass crack does not hang out. Just some fashion advice to all indie wrestlers in the world.
This guy had man boobs.
Yes?
No, I mean, like, he did. I'm not just talking like he was a fat guy and he had a little extra blubber in the chest area. I'm talking he legit, honest to God, had man boobs, no shirt on,
No.
gray. I mean, you didn't say enough about the gray tights. Like, the only thing worse would have been white. That's the only color that could have been worse. And honest to God, he looked so bad, I'm not sure white would have been worse. They brutalized this guy. They brutalized him. They probably took one look at the guy. This is why I'm pretty sure the two guys look different. They probably took one look at this guy and just thought, that other guy ain't getting in. We're just going to kill this guy. And they did.
Quite possible. That is quite possible. Yeah, it was grotesque. And they quickly pinned him with a double drop kick.
Not quickly enough.
Well,
that was $200,000 they spent for that one.
You're right. It wasn't quick at all, actually. I don't know why I said that. Yeah, this is not pleasant to watch. So Morton cut a promo calling out any two of the Four Horsemen to come try and take the tag titles. Said either one of them wanted a shot at Tully's TV title. And then Robert Gibson spoke, and I don't know why or what he said.
They challenged Tully for the television title. And I'm watching, I mean, Ricky's just cutting a great promo like always. And Robert's just standing there. And I'm thinking, maybe they finally figured it out, and like last week, he's just not going to say anything anymore. But no, they gave him the mic. He mumbled something. I have no idea what he said. I can only presume that he was agreeing with Ricky.
I've heard worse Robert Gibson promos.
You know, it'd be funny if, like, Robert Gibson, for his whole career, every time he spoke, he actually was disagreeing with Ricky. But since we can never figure out what he's saying, it was like an in-joke for 15 years.
He may as well be speaking Chinese.
He may as well.
I don't know what he's done. I can't translate most of the time. Rugged Ronnie Garvin came out for a promo. He's out there. He's got his blue jeans, his tank top, and his sunglasses. Says he wore jeans and cowboy boots out in the street. He didn't wear a suit everywhere. He was just a working man. All he needed was jeans in the street and trunks and boots to go to work in the ring. Said someday he was going to be a world champion. We'd all have a world champion who drove a pickup truck and had a dog. Said he had watched Ric Flair beat up Rocky King. He was sure to mention Rocky King was a personal friend of his. And then Flair had tried to break the man's leg, like he had done to Dusty Rhodes and like he had tried to do to Jimmy Garvin. And Ronnie said, I wasn't going to stand back and let this happen, so I went out there to make the save. But I didn't attack Ric Flair from behind. I gave him a chance to get up. I looked him in the eye, and then we went at it. It was a fair fight. And he had him show the video. Show the whole match.
Before you go to the video, I just want everybody to just remember everything that Vinny said about what Ron Garvin said in this promo about hating suits, having a dog, driving a pickup truck, which presumably he bought. He's not a thief. And being a common man. Just everybody remember that, okay?
That's right. So they go to the match. It's Ric Flair versus Rocky King.
This was the greatest match. Flair, the bell rings. Flair takes the guy down, puts him in a figure four leg lock. The ref counts the pin on Rocky. I mean, I couldn't even believe this.
The best part of it is Flair, clearly, because he's Flair, he has the match won, and the ref is in the middle of his 3 count, but because he's Ric Flair, he has to grab the ropes for leverage.
Well, you know, it reminds me very much of there's a match later on, and number 1 Paul Jones is out there, and it's a squash match. It's his superstars against 2 absolutely geeky geeks. He still has to cheat. Right?
Yes.
Because he can't help it. Because it doesn't matter if his team needs no help. And believe me, they needed no help. He's still going to cheat because that's what he does. Just like Ric Flair.
So the match ends. Flair will not release the hold. And then as promised, Ronnie Garvin's in the ring, but he just stands there looking mean. Flair lets go of the hold, lets go of the ropes, kicks Rocky out of the ring, and he looks Garvin in the eye, and time freezes for just a second or two, and then they lock up and get into...
They lock up.
No, it worked, though.
It did. It was amazing.
I don't know how it worked. I know usually we talk about how it doesn't work. Well, it worked because as much as this is about personal dislike, each man still wants to prove he's the better.
Yeah, they're 2 wrestlers.
Yes.
They couldn't help themselves.
Yes. Now, they did 1 lockup. That was the end of the wrestling. What follows may have been the greatest fight I've ever seen in my life.
Was this not just the most amazing spectacle ever in terms of brawling?
Pro wrestling, boxing, UFC, I don't know if I've ever seen a fight like this. They just beat the shit out of each other. And the place, this is not a big building either. If you look at it, it's not like they were cutting for wide shots or anything, but do you remember when Raw first started and they were running with small buildings?
Oh, yeah. Manhattan Center.
Yeah. This looked like that. A couple of thousand people. But they're making so much goddamn noise.
They were, last week on this show, I did a big speech about how I was wrong about Ronnie Garvin. How many times am I going to screw that up? These goddamn Garvins everywhere. How everybody always said it was terrible that Ronnie Garvin won the title. And for like a year now, I've been watching Ronnie Garvin, and I've been behind him getting the title. Last week, he cuts a promo about how few NWA world champions there were in the entire decade of the 80s, and I felt like I finally got it. It's like I'm doing the show in 1987, and somebody in Jim Crockett Promotions listens, and they're like, well, next week we're going to show this fucker that Ronnie Garvin should have won the title, and we're going to do an angle, and we're going to prove it, and that's what they did here. When this was over, I totally did another 180. Ron Garvin should have won the title from Flair. Ron Garvin should have been the champion for like the rest of his life. He should be the champion today. This brawl was so great. Ron Garvin is like the best, mean, tough guy you ever saw in your life. He got in there and beat the shit out of Flair. He gave him like 3 chops, and Flair's just bleeding everywhere from the chest. I'm not talking they chopped each other for 30 minutes. I'm talking he gave him like 3 chops, and there's blood everywhere on Ric Flair's chest. He destroys this guy. The Horsemen finally run in.
No. That's not. You're getting ahead of yourself here. Ronnie Garvin and the world champion Ric Flair give each other everything they have. There's a ref out there, but this is not a sanctioned match. This is just a fight. And they fight in the ring, they fight out of the ring, they fight back in the ring, and finally, Flair gets knocked out of the ring, and he gets up, and he looks at Garvin, and he turns his back, and he walks away. The reaction to this, to Ric Flair conceding defeat in this fight, admitting that on this night, in this instance, Ronnie Garvin was the better man, the night Garvin wins this championship won't get a bigger reaction. This was so monumentally huge, just Flair turning his back and walking away. They cut to the ring where Garvin is now posing with the belt. Dylan can't even stand. His hands are on his knees. He's bent over, just sick. And then Flair comes out with the other Horsemen, all 4 of them, 3 of them champions, and they hit the ring, and for about 30 seconds, Ronnie Garvin just whips all their asses. Just takes them apart. Finally, there's 4 of them and 1 of him. He is overwhelmed, and they attack him for a bit until every babyface on the earth comes out and cleans house. The last thing, they were sure they didn't just leave Ronnie Garvin down with all the babyfaces kneeling over him. They made sure he got back up to his feet, and his friends raised his hands in celebration, and everyone cheered, so they knew he had given Flair his best, proven he was the better man. He had survived the assault of 4 men and was still ready to fight. This is like the best thing I ever saw.
It was amazing. You know how many times...
Astonishing.
Do you know how many times... The worst offender was like Impact, but they do it on WWE as well, where they have a story they want to tell you, and so they just tell you what you're supposed to believe. They tell you that you're supposed to take this guy seriously. They tell you that you're supposed to think that this guy's the best. They tell you this. They make up a story. Ronnie Garvin, before they showed this footage, says... You're going to watch this footage, and when it's over, you're going to know why I'm going to beat Ric Flair and win the World Heavyweight title. Now, Ron Garvin and a lot of guys can say a lot of bullshit, like, I'm going to beat this guy for the title. But you know what? When this was over, I knew why Ronnie Garvin was going to beat Ric Flair and win the World Heavyweight. I didn't have a doubt in my mind as a fan that Ron Garvin was the better man, and when they had a one-on-one singles match, he was going to destroy this guy and win the title. You have to see it to believe it sometimes. And boy, did I hear.
And one other thing. It's a subtle thing in this specific angle, but it's a big thing about what they did a lot back then. Ronnie Garvin has friends. And when he gets in trouble, they come and watch his back. No one ever has to ask anyone to watch their back in the day. They all had friends. Everyone had someone who would come rescue them because they were good people and likable.
Well, like we've got this whole thing going on with the Shield, and Roman Reigns is nowhere to be found.
Yeah.
Guys get beat up all the time. They have no friends. Not back then.
No.
Crying out loud, Ron Garvin's good, close, personal friends with Rocky King. He's got all sorts of
Absolutely.
buddies.
Absolutely. Because he's so likable. Who wouldn't want to be friends with Ronnie Garvin?
I want to be my dad.
They go to break, they come back, and now J.J. Dillon and Lex Luger are there for a promo. Have a clip of Luger wrestling Dusty Rhodes.
Can I talk about this?
Well, that is what we're here for.
Dusty does a suplex outside in. The referee's down. Covers the guy for a visual pinfall. They do another spot. Oh, first, Dusty end up... they do the deal where, Dusty goes running and Luger tosses him over the top or whatever. So they do the suplex inside out, visual pinfall. Then they do another spot. Dusty rolls through and pins the guy. He beat him twice. It wasn't enough for Dusty to just, beat him once. He had to beat him twice. Lex bails. Referee reveals that before the outside in spot, Luger backdropped Dusty outside, over the top rope DQ. Luger retains. There's so many Dusty finishes. I knew it happened, but watching it, it's just one after another, over and over and over and over and over and over again. And then, not only did Dusty Rhodes pin the guy twice, but afterwards, he goes into Luger's locker room.
Yes,
and
this is the real key.
He chokes the guy unconscious because he's a poor loser. The other babyfaces are encouraging him to kill Lex Luger.
Yes. Dusty has the man on the ground in the locker room in a rear naked choke. And his friends are going, "Squeeze, Dusty! Squeeze!" as he attempts to end this man's life. And by the way, you got a detail wrong. Dusty backdropped Lex out of the ring.
Oh, that's even better.
So Dusty lost. He got disqualified. So he lost due to his own dumb mistake. Now he's attacking the winner, who is just trying to compete in a sporting event and follow the rules. Now he's attempting to murder this man as his friends cheer him on. And finally, who is the voice of reason that can make Dusty stop? J.J. Dillon.
Yep.
Who calmly says, "Dusty, it's over. He's had enough." And Dusty lets go of the hold, and he barks something at JJ, and he storms off.
He says it'll never be over.
It'll never be over. So they go back to the studio. JJ says, "I know Dusty Rhodes has been training with Johnny Weaver, the master of the sleeper, and he has spent years learning the secrets of the sleeper. But let me tell you, this was no sleeper hold. This was a choke. He attempted to choke this man to death." Les cuts a promo. It was not very good.
It was not very good, but you know what? He said it was an illegal chokehold. Mm-hmm. You, per the rules, you lost. You screwed up. You got yourself disqualified. And then you're a poor sport and you go back there and you try to kill me. And he says, this is something that you will regret for the rest of your life. Something in me is snapped. He vows to destroy Dusty Rhodes. Key to this here is everyone on this show, this is what's great about the show. Everybody on this show believes they're right. J.J. Dillon, when he cuts his promo, he believes every word he's saying. Lex Luger, when he cuts his promo, believes every word he's saying. The funny thing is, the heels are right. Dusty Rhodes is absolutely in the wrong here. It's weird. And I got more to say about Dusty later.
The other points Lex had were that Dusty was jealous of him because he was younger and looked better. True. And also because he had accomplished more in 2 years in this business than Dusty had done in his first 15.
I'm not sure about that, but...
No. So Jim Cornette comes out for a promo. He talks about Dragnet, and then he lists a bunch of...
He was watching Dragnet, he says.
Maybe this was when the movie came out. I'm not sure. But
I doubt it. I think he's talking about the TV show.
He may have been talking about the TV show. He starts listing a bunch of facts, and all the facts are, of course, opinion.
Of course.
The fact is the Midnight Express is the best tag team in the world. The fact is no one can beat us. The fact is no one can match our move set, for lack of a better term. And now he lists all these facts that are clearly not facts, but then he gets to the most important fact that is a fact, where he says it is a fact that the world title, the World Tag Team Championships, are the most prestigious tag team championships out there. But it's also a fact that the Rock and Roll Express can't call themselves the best until they beat the Midnight Express. So he got that in there. So this is all to lead to, well, a million tag matches, because he talked about the Superpowers too, but Midnight Express is still chasing the Rock and Roll Express for the World Tag Team titles. Then we had the Midnight Express versus Ricky Nelson and David Isley.
That was the most amazing thing in this match. It harkened back to my days with Buddy Wayne. So Ricky Nelson is like a skinny guy. He's got a decent physique, but he's skinny and small. Very much like me when I started. And he's in there, and Stan Lane decides, I'm going to give this guy something. And he allows Ricky Nelson to lift him up and give him like a reverse atomic drop. Drop Stan Lane ass first on his knee. So Stan probably said, hit me with something. He didn't tell me anything else. And so Ricky Nelson, exactly like I used to do, he hits his move, and then the guy didn't tell him to do anything else, so he stands there. And he stands there, and he stands there. He's just hit Stan Lane with a reverse atomic drop. Stan Lane bounces off his knee, he bounces into the ropes, he turns around, he sells his ass, he rubs his ass. He's waiting. Ricky Nelson does nothing. And so Stan Lane just stands there and he takes his head off with a lariat. I died watching this. You know how many times this happened to me with Buddy Wayne? 1,000,000 times. You gotta get in there and take it.
That's right. Show some aggression, kid. So I was trying to work in a Ricky Nelson, David Isley joke, but unfortunately the Isley brothers did not include a man named David, so I didn't have that. It was a long squash that went through a break, and the Midnight Express won with the flapjack.
Yeah, they hit 1,000,000 moves, top rope leg drop, 1,000,000 moves, flapjack. That was the match.
There were a bunch of finishes in here. Top rope leg drop, bulldog headlock, and eventually the flapjack in the win. I have seen many segments worse than the one I'm about to talk about, but I don't think in the time we've been reviewing the show we've seen anything weirder than what happened. Tommy Angel versus Mike Jackson.
Yep, this was a showcase match for Mike Jackson, the Alabama Junior Heavyweight Champion.
Or, as David Crockett says, the Alabama Junior Heavyweight Champion. That's right,
the Alabama Champion.
I was certain that they would do some stuff, and then the Road Warriors would show up and kill them both, or somebody. No, they just did a match on TV between Tommy Angel and Mike Jackson for several minutes.
This Tommy Angel is absolutely horrendous, but Mike Jackson must be like of the caliber of Ric Flair, because he got a perfectly acceptable, passable match with Tommy Angel, which I would have thought outside of Ric Flair was impossible.
He's awesome, this Mike Jackson guy. They did some stuff for 4 or 5 minutes, and then Jackson did a reverse crossbody off the top for the win. Now here's a finish someone needs to bring back.
It's kind of like a moonsault crossbody.
Kinda. You just climb the top rope facing the outside, and just jump back and twist and crossbody the guy.
I bet you anything he still does that in 2017.
That's a very safe bet.
I'd bet you anything.
He may still be the Alabama Junior Heavyweight Champion.
Great.
I hope so.
I'd so have a match with this guy without even blinking.
And it'd be very good. Because he's Mike Jackson. All right, Brian, talk about Dusty Rhodes.
I hate to get on this guy every week because he's a legend. And I know, everybody in NXT just absolutely loves the guy, but you got to go back and watch this stuff. Dusty Rhodes is he's supposed to be the top babyface, right? The American Dream, Dusty Rhodes.
Yeah. Blue
collar, son of a plumber. He comes out here and does this completely bizarre promo about how, he's always up and out. The Horsemen they flash their money, they flash their cars, all that other kind of stuff. Dusty the Common Man's out there, and he is going on and on about how he has so much money, and he's rich, and Luger has no money, And he reminds us multiple times that Luger has no money. He mentions, this is Dusty Rhodes, he spends $3,000 a week on groceries.
In the 80s.
In the 80s.
It's like $10,000 now.
You know how much ribeye you'd have to buy at Whole Foods to spend $3,000 a week on grocery bills? His gimmick is that he's the common man, the hard-working blue-collar fella, and he's out there doing these promos every week talking about how he's got all this money and all these women. It's like he wants to be a horseman, but he's not. And he's killing his own gimmick by trying to be more horseman than the horseman. Am I the only one?
No, it is quite strange.
It's bizarre.
It's one of those things where, I mean, you talked earlier about Flair talking about panties and whatever else was on his mind. Only Dusty Rhodes could get away with this? Although apparently, maybe not even Dusty Rhodes.
I guess. I mean, as a fan, I'm watching it. Listen, all I know is I saw that Ronnie Garvin promo, and he's out there and he's got no suit on. And he's never flashing his money. And there's never been a show where I watch Ronnie Garvin and I think, you know what, this guy is BSing about being a blue-collar guy that drives a truck. But, like, Dusty is supposed to be even more blue-collar and hard-working and common man than Ronnie Garvin, but he's out there acting like he's all rich and famous. It's weird.
So his closing line here was he promised to put Lex's head between his legs, pat him on the hiney, and call for someone else. What?
Don't look at me.
That Flair video aired again. I can only assume this is all being done so that when Garvin finally wins the title, they will start playing this, and there'll be like a record scratch, and then it'll turn into a Garvin tribute video. That's the only thing I can imagine this leading to.
It's also bizarre.
The Freebirds versus Art Pritz and Dexter Westcott. This was funny because the Freebirds are babyfaces and they're stars. So it's a total squash here. It's Michael Hayes and Buddy Roberts, no Terry Gordy this week. And they're beating these guys up for 2 or 3 minutes, and there's zero offense from the Geeks. There's a 100% squash. And then Michael Hayes tags in, and even though he has not sold one thing this entire match, it's time for the comeback. And he stands in the ring throwing punches as the other guys feed him one by one, bump and get out of the way. It was like he just got in a hot tag after Roberts had been in the ring for 10 minutes selling. But no, they've been in control the entire time. So he made a comeback. I don't know what he was coming back from. He hit a huge double backdrop. And then Hayes pinned Pritz with a side slam.
A side slam.
I realize this is the 1980s. You can't have everyone doing power bombs or pile drivers or whatever, but even by those standards, this was a weak finish.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it.
I think it was
It was weird because when he hit it, I was like, this jobber ain't kicking out. But really, like a side suplex? And sure enough, the guy didn't kick out.
No, it was the finish. And there's one other guy I can remember using this finish, and it was Dino Bravo, who was like 100 pounds bigger than Hayes. So it worked for him. So that was weird. I enjoyed this match as unintentional comedy. Then the Freebirds cut a promo.
What a promo. Hayes cuts this great promo on Jim Cornette. And then he mentions the Birds are back. The Birds are back in town. And they're stone cold sober. All right.
Yeah, I missed that line.
That is exactly what he said. I thought, alrighty then. Well, good to see you guys are sober. That's good news.
That is always good news. He has some line in there about Jimmy Cornette. I forget what he said. But he spends most of his time honestly talking about how great the Freebirds are. And it's a great Michael Hayes promo. And he's all happy and partying, and they just had a big win, and they're on a roll, and all these so he's happy. And then Buddy Roberts is just pissed off and ornery. He just growls and says, "You got our attention now." It's so weird. In his World Championship Wrestling debut, at least as far as what's on the network, Hot Stuff Eddie Gilbert versus Alan Martin.
Holy smokes. Where's this guy been? Eddie Gilbert was so great on this show.
Yeah.
He gave the most enjoyable beating to Alan Martin. Just a great squash match. Cut the most awesome promo. Guy's like totally modern. Like, you could snatch him out of this show and put him on Raw, and he'd be like The best guy on the whole roster.
Eddie Gilbert was timeless. He'd be a star in any era. It was, because I haven't seen him in so long, it was like, there was a combination of, hey, cool, it's Eddie Gilbert, and then, of course, sadness, because Eddie Gilbert died shortly. Well, not that shortly, but he's dead now. So it was very sad. He was jacked up here. He backdropped Martin so high, Martin over-rotated and came straight down on his ass. My favorite thing he did in this whole segment, he beats him and beats him and beats him, and it's time for the finish, and he tells the world, this is called the hot shot. And the announcer is like, okay, he's going to do a hot shot. And he whips Martin in, and he hits the hot shot, and he wins.
You got to call your shot.
He got his shit over.
Yeah.
He didn't just get it in, he got it over. That's important. So they show some replays. He puts his jacket and sunglasses back on for the promo, which is awesome. Challenges Steve Williams for the UWF tag title. Challenges the Lightning Express, Brad Armstrong and Tim Horner.
Oh, God. Hopefully that one doesn't happen.
Your favorites for the UWF tag titles. Says his stable is called the First Family. It's himself, Dick Murdoch, Terry Taylor, and Rick Steiner.
Oh, my God. Him and Dick Murdoch.
Yes.
Dude, by the way, we were watching I guess it would have been the 94 Royal Rumble on the Filthy Tom show. And who should show up out of nowhere but Dick Murdoch?
Yes.
Like, he was dead a year and a half later of a heart attack, which is crazy. He's in there just running roughshod in this Royal Rumble. He was so great. Like, he could have won, I wouldn't have had a problem with it.
No.
He looked exactly the same as he did 10 years earlier. Fat belly, skinny legs. I mean, exactly the same.
And that was the year that Brett and Lex tied?
That would have been... was that the year or the year before? Yeah, it was a tie. Pretty sure. No, it was not the tie. That was the year before.
Okay. So, I forget who won. I was for a moment there, I was imagining Dick Murdoch versus Yokozuna for the World Championship at WrestleMania.
No, it was Shawn winning.
Shawn won.
One foot touched the ground.
Dick Murdoch versus Diesel would not have been as good.
No, but that Shawn Michaels Diesel match wasn't that good either. So it's possible that Dick Murdoch may have got a better match out of Diesel because he would have just beat the hell out of him. It would have been.
He
great.
might have. Yeah. Finally, Eddie here called out Dusty and Doc for bull rope or bunkhouse matches, and he made his exit. Midnight Express came out for a second promo. These are so awesome because there's two formats for Midnight Express promo. Either Cornette comes out by himself, does his promo, and then introduces the Express and they come out and wrestle. Or they all come out together and Cornette does all the talking while Stan and Bobby lean on the podium looking bored.
It's not so much they look bored, but they're paying absolutely no attention to anything that Cornette is saying, and they're busy paying tons of attention to all the girls in the crowd.
This one in particular.
Yeah.
There must have been, I don't know if they were doing the wave, I don't know what was going on in this crowd. Stan and Bobby were so distracted by this that Cornette left and they were still just standing there. And eventually they just pick up their belts and go. Before he left, Cornette claimed they had received 5,000 cards and letters from the Mulkeys' hometown demanding a Midnight's Mulkeys match. And apparently the match was going to happen. So I guess they actually did the Midnight Express versus the Mulkeys at some point. Nikita Koloff and Barry Windham versus John Savage and Thunderfoot number 2. They did some stuff, and Barry pinned 2 with a lariat.
Dude, I wrote the word squash. Like, there was nothing memorable about this.
Good news is there's a lot more to talk about this next match. Steve Williams versus Mike Force. Goddamn Dr. Death.
Dude, the last time we saw him, it felt like he was just kind of there. Not tonight. Tonight he was out of this world.
He was unbelievably great here. He comes out, first thing he does is he's going to grab Mike Force, who's a much smaller man, but he's a big muscular dude. And Doc grabs him, presses him over his head like 4 or 5 times for reps, just showing off that, yes, I am the strongest motherfucker in the world, and just through sheer brute force, I can defeat this man at any time, whenever I choose. However, I am out here to show a variety of skills. And thus, he then spent the next minute using wrestling holds and throws to show he understood things like leverage and takedowns and timing and explosive power as well, and could not just muscle a guy. He did the best slingshot of all time. I remember for years, I would see guys do a slingshot, and they'd grab a guy like they're going to do a Boston Crab, and then they'd fall to their back, and the guy go launching forward through the air. And I always thought, even like 10 years old, I thought it looked ridiculous. And then I got into wrestling, and I learned it's slightly less ridiculous than it looks, but only slightly. And then I watched Steve Williams slingshot Mike Force. If this had been the finish, I'd have bought it. He just launched this fell to his back at light speed, and Mike Force flipped forward onto his face and rolled out of the ring in agony. It was awesome. And finally, Doc hit a football tackle, because he's a football player, and then the Oklahoma Stampede for the win.
God, he was so great here.
A Hall of Fame caliber squash match.
He was so great. But then they go to the promo.
There is a turn.
And here was what was, there were so many great things about this promo. First off, it's Jim Crockett Promotions, but not to Dr. Death. To Dr. Death, it's Jim Crockett's promotion.
Right.
Which it is.
He's not wrong.
It's very much like when my dad goes to the all-you-can-eat buffet, but he calls it the eat-all-you-can buffet.
That's right.
Which is correct, but it's not correct, if you know what I mean. Says he's giving Big Bubba a rematch. He's cutting a promo on Eddie Gilbert. Says he'll defend the WWF title against anybody. And then he just kind of walks off.
Here's what he says. His closing line, he says, "All you people wanting to jump my back, I've got a dream for you."
And he starts walking.
He starts walking away.
And like the cameraman apparently didn't think that was a good cue to end, because the cameraman films him walking away under the bleachers. And then he's just gone.
Yes.
And they go back to Tony, and he goes, "We'll be right back."
Let me repeat
like,
this.
What in the hell was that?
This is how he closed his promo. "All you people wanting to jump my back, I've got a dream for you." I don't blame the cameraman.
No, something.
I thought there had to be something else coming.
Maybe he mumbled something that we didn't quite. I don't know.
To my knowledge, there was no sound.
It was
I also
bizarre.
liked when he talked about all the tough guys he was going to fight, and he said, "These men are all athletes. They're not cartoon image people."
So he was a great wrestler, not a great promo.
No, although I will at least say this was a great horrible promo.
Yeah, it was very
I
memorable.
mean, it was horrible.
Yeah.
But it was great.
Yeah.
Nikita and Barry came out for a promo. Said all the other teams in the territory were upset to see them hook it up now. And they called it the Horsemen for their singles matches, and Nikita was sure to get a shot at an Ivan just because Ivan was in the ring, and they may face off again somewhere down the line. I always like, everyone sets up like 3 or 4 different matches. Whatever the big match is for this week or this month, and just to let everyone know, I still hate these other guys too. Everyone's always got there's always different paths guys can take depending on how things go. So it was Ivan Koloff and the Ball Bearing versus Max MacGyver and Keith Patterson.
Allow me for one moment. So I was watching this, and I started right around 9:30 or 8:30 or whatever, or 8. I don't remember. But the point is, I had a feeling I knew when the show was going to be over. And I'm looking at the clock, and it feels like the show should be over. So I go to see how much time is left. There's 6 minutes. So the only thing that I can figure is that they also were looking at the time, and there were 6 minutes left when this match went into the ring. And so Ivan Koloff and Barbarian were told, you got to go 6 minutes with Keith Patterson and Max MacGyver. I'm pretty sure it's McGiver.
I don't know.
It was an I, not a Y. But the point of this is, do you know how long 6 minutes on national television really is? It's a long damn time. And they just kept going and going and going and going, and it was astonishing. This match felt like it was 5 hours long. It's not like it was bad, but like, why did Ivan Koloff and Barbarian need to go 6 minutes with Max MacGyver and Keith Patterson, other than we got to kill some time?
Well, that happened.
Welcome to Studio Wrestling.
But you know what? I don't care because of what happened early in this match, and it didn't even involve, technically, any of the 4 men in the match. Keith Patterson gets thrown on the floor, and Paul Jones goes over to attack him.
Oh,
First of all, I'm just watching Paul Jones throw these stomps, and he's got the mariachi jacket on and I don't know what you call that hat. It's not a cowboy hat, but it's that wide-brimmed hat he's got. And he's like stepping, throwing a stomp, step back, step up, throw a stomp, step back. It is like he is tap dancing, and there happens to be a man there on the receiving end of these stomps. So I went back to rewind this, and I'm on your Apple TV, and I've gotten the hang of using it, but it does not rewind very well. But I wanted to watch these stomps again, so I rewound. And then I took a good close look at just what Paul Jones was wearing. Because usually, we just focus on the mariachi jacket, the hat, he's got like an ascot, and his mustache. And if you see any more, it's just like he's wearing like a shirt and slacks. Did you notice what was under the jacket?
I did not.
It is not a shirt and slacks. Paul Jones is wearing a spandex full-body catsuit with bell-bottoms.
Really?
Yes. Paul Jones puts on the catsuit, puts on his shoes and socks under the bell-bottoms, hides it all with the jacket and ascot, and then puts his hat on, and he goes out there and goes to work. I could not believe my eyes.
Well, what you're missing here in this, I mean, you saw way more than I did, but what you're missing is when you're talking about the stomps that he was doing on this jobber here, he was kicking this guy right in the head with the pointed toe of his cowboy boots. Which,
probably lead reinforced.
It's ironic you don't
Steel toe
mention it,
boots,
because
yeah.
I seem to remember that very early in your wrestling career, you were doing a match with Buddy Wayne, and you booted him right in the stomach with the toe of your boot. Do you remember this?
I'm sorry, with who?
Buddy.
I'm not denying it, but I don't remember it.
Yeah, you booted him in the stomach with the toe of your boot, and man, he unleashed on you, yelling at you about hitting him with the flat of the boot and not the toe. He went on and on and on and on. So Paul Jones did this poor guy right here with the pointed toe of a cowboy boot. Terrible.
So Keith Patterson, we need to name the worst wrestler of all time of the week, and it's either Keith Patterson or that guy from the Rock and Roll Express match. And I think actually it's that Rock and Roll Express guy, whether that was Ed or Gary, whichever one. But Keith is pretty bad, especially at rope running. Barbarian was awesome. They do it at the spot where Ivan drops down on one knee, and Barbarian presses Patterson and then drops him across the knee, which is exactly what he did. He pressed him with ease, but then when it came to drop him, he protected Patterson so well. It was so awesome. The match went on for a while, and they won with the elevated Russian hammer. It was funny, as you mentioned, I don't know why this match had to go 6 minutes, but it left them with about 15 seconds to cut their promo afterwards.
This is even better.
I have no idea what they were talking about.
I'll tell you. Paul Jones is yelling and screaming. He's wielding a chain. He's ranting about the ball bearing. I'm pretty sure that they kind of challenged the Four Horsemen. They said they wanted to be champions, and they were a tag team, and I think they challenged them. But anyway, the point of this is, they're just getting going, and Tony starts screaming that we're out of time. I'm like, why did you even bother? Like, why didn't you just end the show at the end of the match? As soon as he says they're out of time, it's in the middle of Ivan ranting. Paul Jones decides, well, if we're out of time, I'm going to start screaming at the top of my lungs so loud that hopefully when the next show starts, you'll still hear me. He's screaming about something. They're playing the music. They roll the credits. The show ends. It was an awesome finale. Paul Jones, baby.
That's Paul Jones. Number one Paul Jones.
Number one Paul Jones. One of my heroes here on these old shows. He's absolutely terrible, but he's great. Absolutely terrible, but great. One of the wonderful things about this business, when you could be absolutely terrible and also great. And that's the show.
That was a fun show.
That was a very, very fun show. Seriously, the episode is, what is it, August, whatever. Tell me.
8/8/87.
8/8/87. Go back, fast forward about 45 minutes in, and watch the stuff with Ric Flair and Ronnie Garvin.
And Steve Williams.
Like, Dave's going to come on the show tonight. I can tell you right now. He's going to come on the show, and he's going to talk about how awesome the third night of PWG was. And he's going to rave about it. There's no way it's better than Ronnie Garvin and Ric Flair's brawl on this show. I refuse to believe it, no matter what anybody says. So go back and check that out. It's unbelievable. And with that, we're out of here.
And there will be gorilla shit all over the army.
But it was.
Yeah.
It was terrible.
Well, NWA World Championship Wrestling. We had a clip of Ric Flair trying to interrupt a match between the Midnight Express and the Garvin brothers, as Jim Cornette frantically begged him not to interfere because he wanted to win the match. and didn't want to get disqualified unless absolutely necessary. Jimmy Garvin versus Cougar J. We talked about this before. On this show, especially when it's all squashes, you really need someone to come out and just start the show on a hot note, get things kicking.
I guess that's Jimmy Garvin.
Not today, it wasn't.
Well, I mean, he did a good brainbuster.
Until then, he said,
What in the world are you going to do with Cougar J?
I'm going to go out here and trade hammerlocks for 5 minutes.
What can you do with this guy? He can't do anything.
Brainbuster him in one.
Well, they need to put in some time. It's a 2-hour show.
So, Jimmy did win with the brainbuster, which looked awesome for many reasons, but one of them is Cougar J is the guy who, when he takes suplexes, his one arm's over the other guy's head, and his other arm, instead of, you're supposed to put your hand on his thigh or hip and post yourself up, Cougar J takes him and his arm is sticking straight up into the air, which usually is terrible for a suplex, but you're taking a brainbuster like that, and then you get dropped, that means you actually are falling head first to the mat. Like, just nose first.
So his arm is pointing towards his foot.
Yes.
Which makes it straight up in the air.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's like you actually took a person that was just standing on the street and you turned them upside down.
And dropped them on their head.
Yeah.
Is the idea. So, yes, it was a great brainbuster. And then Jimmy cut a promo. He promised Ronnie was going to beat Flair. Dusty Rhodes was going to beat Lex Luger. And he was going to team with Barry Windham to chase the Midnight Express and the U.S. tag titles.
A very happy, positive fella.
Kendall Windham versus Gladiator number 1.
Oh my God, you got so mad at Kendall Windham.
Both of them, actually, but mostly Kendall.
Gladiator was particularly fat and very purplish this evening. I couldn't tell because it was...
Tell me more about your fat purple Gladiator.
That's what he was.
Yeah.
He was very fat and purplish and kind of lumpy. Know what I mean?
No, you're right on all of this.
I couldn't tell if he was purple or blue. He looked like Barney, I felt.
All
I could have
I know-
been wrong about it.
All I know is that Gladiator number 1 was horrible and clearly the superior wrestler in this match. I've never seen a human being who looked goofier or more ungainly or more awkward while running than Kendall Windham. Remember when Zach Gowen wrestled on his one leg and hopped the ropes?
Yeah.
More coordination and skill than Kendall Windham. So...
It went forever.
Went forever. That's an important part to this. Kendall hits a drop kick and makes a cover. He hooks the near leg, right? The leg closest to the ropes.
Sure.
Gladiator takes the far leg, sticks it under the near leg, and gets it on the ropes.
Hey, clever.
Almost impossible.
Well, he fucking did it, so it's not almost impossible.
This went forever and ever and ever. At no point was it any good. At times it was miserable. Kendall won with a bulldog, for which Gladiator took a flip bump.
You know, when I saw it, you were so appalled by it, but I was like, that was kind of cool, I think. But
No.
I wasn't sure, and so I was waiting for the replay, and there wasn't one. So I guess
that's a
that
sign.
probably answers the question that it wasn't really all that cool.
I thought this match was awful. Until I saw Kendall's promo and learned a new definition of what awful is all about.
Well, I'm going to tell you something, but I want you to tell everybody about this promo before I tell you what I'm about to tell you.
So I go first?
Yes.
That confused me. So Kendall's promo, he lisped throughout. He lost his train of thought. He mumbled. He had nothing to say. And he left. That was when I determined Kendall Windham is not just the worst wrestler of all time of the week. He is the worst wrestler of all time of the last several months. This is the worst performance by a quote-unquote star that I've seen in a long time.
I'm not quite sure you could even quote-unquote call him a star, but... So Kendall just does this absolutely hideous promo. Just friendly old country boy, can barely string 2 words together. You made a comment afterwards you didn't make here on the air about this guy. Are you aware, Vinny, that a mere 3 years later... This is from Wikipedia. In 1990, Kendall Windham, and his father, Blackjack Mulligan, were arrested by the U.S. Secret Service in a joint investigation with the Florida Department of Law Enforcement for counterfeiting. They found close to $500,000 in phony $20 bills. There was a plea agreement. They both spent 2 years in federal prison. and were released in 1992. This guy was part of that.
Yeah.
That's mind-blowing.
Well, that's now you know why he got caught.
I watched this. I wasn't sure he could identify a $20 bill. Now I find out he's counterfeiting them. The things you learn. Which, by the way, on a totally unrelated but related note, we have not seen Vladimir Pietrov here for a while.
Been a while.
In
fact, they have stopped mentioning his name.
Yeah.
Ivan's listing all the folks in Paul Jones's army, and Vladimir Pietrov's name has not been there.
Serious legal troubles he's undergoing at the moment.
Oh, dear.
Yes. Yes.
Some bad boys in this roster.
You know, there were some hoodlums
Hoodlums.
here in NWA in 1987.
So I was in a real foul mood at this point because of Kendall Windham.
Luckily, it turned around.
Thank the Lord above. Jimmy Valiant came out to chase my blues away. Jimmy comes out there, just I can't even say seduces. He forces himself on Tony Schiavone.
He raped him.
It was a crime what he did to Tony Schiavone.
Valiant is one of those guys, just like Buddy Wayne, where Buddy Wayne kissed me once. I'm sure I've told the story a million times. But just grabbed me and kissed me straight on the lips after this match because we were getting a lot of heat and the fans were yelling very negative things about us. And so he decided he'd show them, and he kissed me.
Right.
Anyway, both of these guys, Buddy and Jimmy Valiant, they didn't mind kissing you because they knew you hated it.
Right.
And they wanted to make you as uncomfortable as humanly possible. It's exactly what Valiant did here. He knew that Tony wanted him to just, stay away, and so he went over and he kissed him. And he tried it every single time because he knew how uncomfortable it made Tony Schiavone. And it brought him such joy to make him that uncomfortable.
Yes. He high-fived all the fans. He was dancing, having a great old time. Finally, he gets in the ring, and there's Terry Jones. Terry Jones has the Buddy Landell hairdo. Exact same cut, exact same dye job. He's got purple and lavender gear, including trunks that are too big for him. Phenomenal jobber. So, Valiant's wrestling him, and everything he does is always illegal. And he makes a cover, and Terry Jones kicks out at 2, and Valiant plants his shin across the man's throat in a chokehold while arguing with the ref.
For 5 minutes.
Forever.
He was trying to choke him to death.
Terry Jones must have passed away here. The human body cannot go this long without oxygen.
No, he was dead for sure.
Forever and ever and ever. And then Jimmy pinned his corpse with the boogie woogie elbow. I was much happier. And then Jimmy cut a promo at ringside, the gist of which I'll summarize. He is going to team with Lasertron and Bugsy McGraw.
Oh, my God.
To challenge for the World Six-Man titles.
Well, we knew that him and Lasertron were partners, but now he's added Bugsy McGraw.
Yes.
This sounds like the worst six-man team, of all time.
It's way up there.
Although I like Lasertron and I like Jimmy Valiant, but Bugsy McGraw is enough to, just offsets everything.
Yeah. Had Sean Royal versus Larry Stevens. Sean Royal's in the new breed, has been doing singles matches for a while. The announcers finally started to ask, where is Chris Champion?
The answer is they'd been in a car wreck.
I see.
Chris Champion was recovering. He'll be back soon.
Yes.
With a new gimmick.
I know what it is, and I can't wait. So, again, Royal had a 50-50 match over this jobber. Larry's holding him down with an armbar, and the announcers are bored out of their skulls. Saying, Larry Stevens needs to do more here than just hold an arm. Which I feel like I've said many times watching this show about various guys. The finish was awesome. Stevens runs wild, whips him into the corner. He goes and jumps in the middle rope for a monkey flip, but Royal just shoves him down into a flat back bump, and then Royal finished him off with a knee drop for the win. Had the Ric Flair video, which at this point I may as well just type the Nitro Girls danced. After the break, they interviewed Royal.
You know, this promo right here, I don't know, I'd hesitate to call it like a legendary promo, but if you were a fan in the era, I mean, you remember this promo. People still talk about this promo because it was preposterous. The delivery was terrible. They ask him, where is your partner? Where's Chris Champion? And Sean Royal reveals that he's right here next to me. He's invisible.
Mm-hmm.
You can't see him, but you'll understand in a few light years.
You can't see him due to an illusion, he says.
An illusion.
But you will understand in a few light years.
In a few light years? Well, we'll all be dead in a few light years.
Does he know that light years are a measurement of distance, not time?
Well, that too, yeah. But 386,000 miles per second or whatever the number is.
Mm-hmm.
It's anyway. Then he mocks Dusty.
He does his Dusty Rhodes impression.
He threatens to put the space lock on Dusty.
That's what he said.
The space lock. Of all they're time travelers. Like, he couldn't call it the DeLorean lock. Back to the Future was out. I mean, that's the best he could come up with.
The time machine lock. H.G. Wells wrote that before.
The space lock.
Space lock. He's so amazingly bad.
Oh my God, it was horrible.
Calls out Dusty Rhodes as if. Calls out the Rock and Roll Express. And then he just leaves. And they go to Tony. Tony is baffled. I think Tony was well aware how terrible this was.
Oh, of course he was.
And just didn't know what to do. He just threw it to break.
Just deadpan took us to the next match. And by the way, they come back here as baby faces.
I don't know. Ronnie Garvin versus Dexter Westcott. He claims Flair had been champion for 5 years aside from Dusty Rhodes' title reign. So I guess the Kerry Von Erich reign was never recognized in Atlanta. Ronnie beat him up forever. Hit a chop to the chest. David Crockett lost his mind. Eventually, Garvin won with the knockout punch.
You know, this was, I wouldn't go as far as to call it boring. I mean, it should have been more boring than it was. But the one thing that is notable is he did not get a superstar reaction from this crowd. He got a babyface reaction. And then Dusty Rhodes.
Your favorite.
In the stupidest outfit I've ever seen. Again. He's got jeans, a white Hard Rock Cafe shirt,
Yes.
a gold chain, a suit jacket top, not bottom, a yellow trucker hat with the green bill.
Yes.
Like something's going on.
It was hideous.
It was atrocious.
He talks about learning the sleeper hold. He plugs shows in Denver and Detroit. Promises Ronnie's going to beat Ric Flair. And then Ronnie appeared to speak for himself. Ronnie was on fire this week.
Hey, guy's not Ric Flair, but this was a hell of a promo.
Oh, this is a great promo.
Ronnie Garvin standards.
Says, I've got Flair's number. I know it, and you know it too, Ric Flair. I've got that big show in Detroit. I want all my Canadian friends to come down. I was born in Canada. I'm a proud U.S. citizen now, but it's still my birth country. I'd love to see all my Canadian friends there in Detroit. And if you go, you're going to see a war with Ric Flair. I'm going to take everything precious from you, Ric Flair, all your money, all your women. You can't stop me. Crockett can't stop me. Nobody can stop me. I felt you shaking, Ric Flair. I felt the panic inside. You called me out, and I'm going to make you pay. This promo was awesome.
Well, September 25th, the Joe Louis was in fact a house show, and it is the show where he wins the title.
That's right.
So there you go.
Ivan Koloff cut a promo. He demands stiffer competition.
Well, first he says, I don't like negative people.
Yeah, that's what he gets into, yeah.
Yes, to be a winner or a leader, you have to think positive.
The Russian Bear said.
He's given us a motivational speech as a top heel in this company.
He says he hates negative people, bitter people who complain. As much as he despises Dusty Rhodes, he admits Dusty as a winner and a leader, not a whiner or a quitter. He talked about other people who were winners and leaders, and he called out the Superpowers, the Rock and Roll Express, the Garvins, and the Wyndhams.
I did like that he's very angry at Dusty for bringing Nikita over to the ways of the U.S., not actually blaming Nikita for going.
Right.
It's the Americans' fault.
Of
Because
course.
blood is still thicker than water.
That's true. Raging Bull and Barbarian versus Rocky King and George Smith. Not George South. George Smith. I was trying to figure out who George Smith looked like here, and I finally figured it out. Facially, he looked like Dalton Castle with a
enormous
blow dry mullet.
Oh, yeah.
Just teased up to the sky. Hair everywhere.
It was amazing.
Bull gave him one chance to do some stuff, but then Smith tripped over him on a drop down, and Bull said, well, fuck this, and just beat him up for a while.
I couldn't tell if that was a legitimate trip or like a spot.
I thought about that too. I think it was the former. It may have been a spot where they said, hey, I'll be a geek and triple you, and then you kick my ass. Possible.
The bigger issue than the trip was he came in and he's wearing red trunks and red boots, and Raging Bull is wearing red trunks and red boots.
Yeah.
Very big faux pas right
Both have mullets, both have mustaches. Yeah.
there. Not good.
So, Barbarian had a power slam. I am quite certain David Crockett had an orgasm at this move. This beating went on for a while. Barbarian had an avalanche Samoan drop, went through a break, and eventually Barbarian pinned King with a diving headbutt. This did not need to go this long.
Hell no, this didn't need to go through a break. Are you kidding me? I wish I would have written down what they had on the screen when they went to the break during this match. It'll only get better from here, maybe.
They showed the full video of the Midnight's Garvin's match from the beginning of the show. So Flair was doing guest commentary.
I got to mention something here first. So on SmackDown a while ago, there was a deal where Kevin Owens was doing commentary, and then he got in the ring, and he demanded the referee take his shirt off. He put the referee's shirt on. Sami Zayn was doing a spot, and, like, Owens gave him a press... The point of this is, like, Owens ends up counting the pin for Sami Zayn. I believe he gave Sami a press power bomb, and Aiden English covered him, and Kevin Owens counted the pin. I may have gotten some of the details wrong, but the point of this is, they fucking rang the bell, and they announced the guy is the winner, Aiden English.
Mm-hmm.
This is just absolutely fucking ridiculous. And I ranted about this, and I raved about this. Some people think, well, you know, Brian just hates modern WWE, blah, 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 blah. Let me tell you what's fucking stupid in NWA in 1987. Flair gets in the ring during this tag match.
Yeah.
Right?
Despite Jim Cornette's protests, Flair removes his jacket and shirt and jewelry and hits the ring.
He gets in the ring, and this brawl breaks out, and everyone's fighting. And suddenly, in the middle of this brawl, the ref has not called for the bell. Ron Garvin hits a reverse rolling cradle, grabs Flair's pants, and the ref counted the pin.
Yes.
What?
The Garvins defeated the Midnight Express because Ronnie Garvin pinned Ric Flair.
Okay, this was fucking ridiculous.
Yeah.
This was absolutely stupid. You cannot have a third guy enter the ring, and it becomes a six-man, and a guy in his street clothes gets pinned. That's ridiculous.
Flair, after the pinfall, was confused as I was. The only good thing about this, and I do mean the only good thing, because Flair ran out to make it 3-on-2, Barry Windham ran down to make it 3-on-3, and this then, after the match, sets up a natural pairing of Jimmy and Barry as a team, since Ronnie is now was going to be world champion. So now Jimmy has something to do. That's the best I can offer.
I can offer one decent thing, and that is that in this angle, Ronnie Garvin is a month away from winning the NWA World Heavyweight title from Ric Flair. Unlike in WWE today, he is not getting beaten and humiliated en route to winning that title.
That's true.
He is not being made to look like a loser so that it's a swerve to you, the viewer, when he wins.
Right.
They flat out are saying he's got Ric Flair's number.
He's on fire.
He's on fire. He's got his number. He's going to beat Ric Flair. And you know what? He goes on and does it. It's the way it should be done. Maybe
Flair,
not every time. It's okay to have a swerve every now and then. But especially a guy like Ronnie Garvin. You can't have a loser beat Ric Flair. And, I mean, that's an absolute, for sure, a disaster. I mean, it's still going to be a disaster, but at least you tried everything you could to get the guy over before he won the title, and it became a disaster.
So Flair came out for a promo, immediately removed his shirt to show the scars in his chest from fighting Garvin. So he would not let anyone embarrass him like Garvin had done. So Garvin's not ready to be champion. Ronnie Garvin, he says, you're not ready for the suits. You're not ready for the jets. And this is almost a quote. You are not ready to make love to all the women who want to go to bed with the champion. Apparently this is part of the deal. As World Heavyweight Wrestling Champion, part of your duties is to go to bed with any woman who wants to sleep with the champ.
Well, you know, gotta make those sacrifices when you're the champ.
I guess so. He vowed to put Garvin out of the sport. He admitted he had lost touch with reality, and he's going to make Garvin pay. was one of Flair's better promos, which makes it one of the best promos ever.
It's very good.
T-Joe Khan versus Keith Steinborn.
T-Joe Khan is back
T-Joe Khan is back.
from a successful Asian tour, says David Crockett.
You don't say.
He did not say the Orient.
That's right.
That was a big step there.
It's only Mike Tenay who says that.
Yes.
So,
He was a little better, I guess.
T-Joe?
Yeah.
Maybe I have been confused, and I thought we had said this in the show. Maybe I'm misremembering things. But I thought we had talked about Chris Champion, the missing member of the New Breed, being T-Joe Khan. Which when I saw
it was
this,
Yoshi.
he was Yoshi Kwan.
Yeah.
I got my white guys pretending to be Asian confused.
Yeah.
So, I learned something tonight.
All this time you thought that T-Joe Khan was Chris Champion?
I kept looking up pictures of T-Joe and pictures of Chris Champion. They don't look like each other. And I couldn't figure this out.
You never bothered to ask or look it up?
I forgot Yoshi Kwan existed.
You idiot. You know you could just Google Chris Champion and it'll tell you all the guys he played, and T-Joe Khan is not on that list?
That's probably true. Anyway, T-Joe had a horrible match.
There's more on Google than porn, Vinny. There's information.
Thanks, Brian.
Just gobsmacked.
So T-Joe won a horrible match here with an uppercut.
Do you realize that the Ultimate Warrior did not, in fact, die in 1996 and come back as another guy?
Well, that's good to know.
Yeah.
T-Joe won with an uppercut.
There were less than 93,000 fans at WrestleMania.
I heard.
That's an urban legend.
I've heard that.
Although if you do Google that one, you're going to get the wrong answer.
Yes, you're really
Idiot
proving your point here.
Wikipedia fucking editors.
You know the real answer, Brian? I never cared that bad.
Well, I don't either, but a lot of people do. And so they care so much that I get mad.
I see.
Yeah.
Jim Cornette came out for a promo. Barry the Freebirds, lousy singers. Barry the Superpowers, Barry Windham and Jimmy Garvin, and the Road Warriors, and finally demanded a match against the Mulkeys. Still on his agenda.
By the way, do people still care now that a WrestleMania actually legitimately beat that number? And they've got a new fake record?
I'm sure they do.
Oh, God. Why? It's not the record anymore. It's just a show now.
People, I don't know. I honestly don't know. Midnight Express versus Ricky Nelson and Dave Diamond.
Cornette went on for an hour about a house show match with the Mulkeys.
Yeah.
Whatever. This guy can talk about anything forever.
That is a fact.
He went on and on during this match. And he goes on and 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 on. And finally I'm writing about how astonishing it is that this guy can just go on and not stop. And as I'm typing this, he walks away and David Crockett goes, he didn't take one breath.
That's right.
So we were all thinking the same thing.
He is amazing. He is a marvel. I love it when Bobby Eaton, before the match, goes to shake hands with the Geeks, and they won't shake his hand, and he's baffled. Just can't understand why these men don't want to be sporting. Not sure what was going on early, but Eaton and Nelson were in the ring and having a big laugh about stuff. The Express tried a double-team top rope elbow spot that didn't quite go off as planned, so Stan just double-arm suplexed Nelson to the heavens instead. The beating went on for a while, and Eaton won with a leg drop. The Mod Squad versus Denny Brown and Italian Stallion.
Okay, so this was kind of weird because, I knew the answer, but when I first saw these teams, I could not help but write down, who are the jobbers?
Well,
I realized at this point in Crockett Promotions, the Mod Squad are like stars. But let's be serious. They're just two jobbers. They're two geeks that got a new gimmick. Denny Brown was the former World Junior Champion.
that's right.
I could make a good argument that actually Denny Brown and Italian Stallion were the stars here, and the Mod Squad were the geeks. Do you know, by the way, who the current World Junior Heavyweight Champion is right now in 1987 NWA?
Oh, it was Lasertron.
That's right!
Yes. We watched the match.
That's right!
It was awesome.
So the Mod Squad got the heat. They worked over Denny Brown.
Yeah, they did a competitive match.
Stallion made a comeback. It broke down into a four-way. There was a spot where Basher tripped up Stallion. Mod hit the top rope elbow for the pin. There were boos, but the Mod Squad had fans. And I have to say, this was a good match. How you could possibly care, that I can't answer. But, like, technically in the ring as a professional wrestling match, it was good. But
That's generous.
it was Denny Brown and the Italian Stallion versus the Mod Squad for 12 fucking minutes on national television.
It was not very bad. I will say that.
I thought it was all right.
I mean, there was nothing technically wrong with it. It just four guys of mediocre talent doing things at the proper time and then doing a finish.
And then, after it's over, so there was a screw job. There was the trip and all this other stuff, which really, is that really a screw job?
He was tricked by the other tag team guys. It's not like it was a manager
Yeah,
or
but is that really cheating? It seems fair to me.
Yeah. As screw job finishes go, that's pretty tame.
Sure. I mean, if I'm in a tag match with you and somebody hits the ropes, I feel like if I'm not the legal man, I can trip them. Why not?
Okay.
Why is that illegal? Anyway, Tony is attempting to explain the finish, and he's just cut off mid-sentence as they go to commercial, and he never got to finish his explanation. They could not wait to get off this.
Barry Windham versus Ed Franks.
Yeah, Ed Franks. Green as grass.
Ed making a strong push to take Kendall Windham's title as the worst wrestler of all time of the week. He was a bodybuilder, clearly, who was
Greener than green.
greener than green. He was short, probably about 5'10" or so.
Actually,
Windham's huge.
I thought the same thing, but then I realized he may have been 6 feet tall. Because Barry Windham is a giant.
Barry Windham is huge. He looked short in there. He had very clearly never been in a fight. And the more I watched this, the more apparent it was, I'm not sure he'd ever been in a ring before. You ever seen, I'm asking you, Brian, as well as the listener at home, have you ever seen a match where the bell rings and the two guys kind of circle the ring?
I have seen that, yes.
Did you know that it's possible to do that badly?
Well,
I didn't.
Well, I did only because the very first pro wrestler that I ever got in a ring with was a guy named Ole Olsen. He had an ad in the paper or something like that. I can't remember how I found him, but he charged like $100 per class.
That's always a great sign.
And I went and I paid my $100, and then like I never paid again. I was like, it was absolutely useless. But point of this is, one of the first things we did was how to circle in the ring.
Okay.
And he's explaining to me, you go this direction, don't go the other direction.
End of lesson.
And he goes, and don't go too fast, because if I go too fast, I get dizzy.
Okay. Good to know. Well,
It's possible Ed Franks had the same affliction.
Ed Franks circled the ring poorly. Ed Franks ran the ropes poorly. And when I say ran the ropes poorly, he ran with his arms sticking straight down at his sides. It's not your normal running motion for anyone is when you take a step forward with your right leg, your left arm swings forward, and vice versa. Not Ed Franks. Ed Franks ran with his arm sticking straight down at all times. Barry goes to give him a body slam. Ed Franks totally deadweights him. Barry is just disgusted. Just drops him from as high as he can on the slam. Just drops him like 5 feet down to the mat. Just stares at him for a while. This goes on for a bit, and eventually Barry wins with a lariat.
Yeah, not much to talk about here.
Barry cuts a promo about the Detroit card. At this Detroit, Michigan show, he's going to defend his Western States title. I love that name. And they're never in the West. He's got a match coming up against Arn Anderson in Detroit. Calls out the Midnights. Here it occurred to me. When you have your Western States champion calling out a U.S. Tag Team champion, and your World Tag Team champion is calling out the TV champion, and the TV champion calling out the World Tag Team champions, you have too many champions.
I think that's abundantly clear.
There's a lot of belts floating around here, and they're all just getting in each other's way. The main event.
Oh, it was so glorious. I waited all night for something like this, and finally I got Ivan Koloff versus Colt Steele.
For a while, it was a squash. It was every squash you ever saw.
Ivan was just beating him up.
Ivan beat him up on the floor, beat him up in the ring.
And then Colt Steele did the single worst running leapfrog of all time. The Kurt Hennig running leapfrog.
Is that what he's trying to do?
I think so. It was so fucked up. It was just, I howled from the couch with laughter.
I just noticed.
And then he threw, after that, the worst drop kick I ever saw in my life. 2, one right after the other.
Yeah.
My heart was just full of joy.
Ivan says, okay, kid, here's your chance. The spot is, I'll whip you in, you leapfrog me, you do a drop kick. I mean, and then when he goes to do them, they're all horrible anyway, but he also is incapable of chaining any of them together in any kind of flow. So he has to hit the ropes, then come to a complete stop. Then do a running leapfrog, then come to a complete stop. Then turn and hit the worst drop kick, and then just stop. And then Ivan put a stop to this. He beat him up. He won with the Russian sickle, which is a totally different move than Nikita Koloff's Russian sickle. Then Ivan goes to cut a promo about how strong Paul Jones' army was, runs down Dusty Rhodes, runs down Steve Williams, another champion.
This was the weirdest rambling promo about 20 random different things that I ever heard. He was like first he was cutting a promo for Flair, because he's cutting a promo on Garvin.
Yes.
And he goes, you don't embarrass the champion, he won't let that pass. And I'm like, why does Ric Flair need Ivan Koloff to talk for him? Then he's talking about Dusty's goofy sleeper. Then he's challenging Dr. Death for the Universal title, but doesn't know what the name of the belt is, so he just challenges him for the belt. It's bizarre.
I like where he said the Kremlin has ordered Steve Williams to defend the belt against Ivan Koloff.
The Kremlin ordered Steve Williams?
That's what he said.
I'm skeptical of that.
Well, it doesn't mean Steve Williams has to obey. And then the show ended. The Flair stuff was good. The Ronnie Garvin stuff was good. Everything else was boring.
Well, you can't win them all, everybody.
You're gonna be mine all night long.
Next show.
Next show. A better show. With worse wrestlers. NWA World Championship Wrestling from August 22nd, 1987.
Yeah, but what they got out of them. This is getting the most out of nothing.
Yes.
Let me tell you.
When you say nothing. Oh, we'll get to it. So the show usually opens with like a little clip to tease, and then they play the full clip later.
Well, this was a clip, but it was also a whole match because Dusty was in it.
Dusty Rhodes is going to wrestle the Gladiator. The Gladiator jumps him at the bell, attacks the bad leg. Dusty makes a comeback and puts the Gladiator out with a sleeper.
He didn't make a comeback. He, whipped him into the ropes.
Hit an elbow.
And put him in his move.
Yeah.
That was his comeback.
Yes. So he put him out with a sleeper. He won in a minute. And as he is celebrating, the Gladiator goes into convulsions. Johnny Weaver was doing commentary. The legend who had taught Dusty how to do a sleeper. Like no one else in wrestling ever did except Johnny Weaver. Johnny says, Dusty, the man is in danger. You have to wake him up. Because apparently after you've choked a man unconscious, he'll die if you don't wake him up.
No, we don't know that. That's the whole key here.
I guess. He is having a seizure or something.
All I know is Dusty slapped him as hard as he could in the back of the neck.
Dusty woke him up by hitting him in the back of the head as hard as he possibly could.
Yeah, that's how they claim you wake a guy up if he's unconscious.
I watched this and I thought, this is 30 years ago. It may as well have been 3,000. May as well have been treating things with leeches and diagnosing humors. Like, what? Do you people know anything about how the human body works at all?
Well, for those of you, if you ever choke your buddy out, what you want to do if he goes unconscious is you want to lay him on his back and you want to lift his legs up in the air and shake him.
That makes so much more sense.
That's what wakes him
Get
up.
that blood going back to his brain.
Yes.
Yeah.
You don't slap him in the back of the head.
Don't sit him up and slap him in the back of the head as hard as you can. Unless you hate him and want him to die. In which case, have at it.
So after they did this, the announcers opened up the show and David Crockett is joyfully asking, man, what do you think would happen if Dusty put Lex in that sleeper and then didn't wake him up?
Yeah.
With utter joy. So when he asked that question, that's when it occurred to me. Well, what would happen in storyline? In pro wrestling storyline, what would happen if Dusty put Lex in the sleeper and didn't wake him up? Would he die? Would he sleep a full 8 hours and wake up refreshed? Would he become Rip Van Luger, where he would sleep for 40 years and then wake up and it would be 2027? And he'd just be baffled by the state of the wrestling business. What would happen? We never got an answer.
No, we never did.
Made me upset, actually. I demand logic in my storylines.
Mike Rotunda versus Alan Martin. Seen Alan Martin a bunch on the show. He's never stood out to me before, but he did tonight.
Well, actually, according to David, Mike Rotundo, he cannot get it right.
Well, to be fair,
he writes the guy's checks. Can you imagine every single time Mike had to put an extra line on that O to get that thing cashed at the bank?
To be fair, no promotion he's ever worked for has been able to keep it straight. It's always Rotundo or Rotunda, and it may change from one show to the next. Regardless, Alan Martin, a fine goof here. Flopping all over the place like a fish, getting out-wrestled, out of his league, and it was in over his head, and it was very clear. And Rotunda just out-wrestled him for a minute or two with various amateur techniques. Crowd was chanting for the airplane spin. Rotunda hit it, and he won.
Yeah, the fans wanted something, and the wrestler gave it to them. Followed up, by the way, with a very devastating AA, and then got the pin on Alan Martin.
That's right. Then he cut a promo.
This guy is Bray Wyatt's dad.
It is amazing, isn't it? Yeah. It started off really bad. He picked it up to some degree by the end.
He's just mumbling.
He seemed to have no idea there was going to be a promo when he started.
Totally embarrassed, shy, trying to explain.
He is a guy who in college was a wrestler and a football player. I thought, well, I'm not good enough football player to be a pro football player. Maybe I can wrestle good enough to be a good pro wrestler, and then had to learn how to talk. So he cut a promo.
You know, people talk like every day.
Not like this.
I know, but like, I'm sure something happened in his life that made him mad. I mean, can't you kind of try to channel that into your promo?
Apparently not. So Terry and Dory Funk had stolen his Florida Heavyweight Championship belt. He was still the champion, but they had the physical belt. He promised he was going to get it back where it belonged. And that was that.
In the record books, he's the champion, even if he doesn't have the belt. He made sure to alert us to that fact.
Jimmy Valiant versus El Negro.
Allow me, Vinny. I wrote every single move of this match down.
Okay, have at it.
This is what happened. For those of you that don't watch the shows, just a reminder, Jimmy Valiant is a babyface. Jimmy Valiant did an eye rake, took the arm. El Negro actually did a switch, but then Jimmy Valiant took it back. He pulled him down by the mask. He pulled him down by the mask again. He choked him with his leg. He threw him onto the cement. He raked his eyes. He threw him into the post. He performed a thumb to the neck. He then got his eyes raked and was punched once. But he did a switch, an elbow, a boogie elbow, and got the pin.
Fact.
This guy must have loved El Negro to have given him three moves in this match.
I think 2 eye rakes, a punch, and an arm wringer.
Yeah, it was
something like that.
It was an arm wringer, an eye rake, and a punch. That's it.
No one's ever gotten this much offense on Jimmy Valiant on Saturday night before.
I don't think so.
No. So yeah, Valiant won.
I love Jimmy Valiant though. Like every match, I just love watching him. He's so. I'll get to it later. I got a comparison later.
Dory Funk Jr. came out in a suit for a promo.
So every time I've ever seen this guy, it's almost always in a match or in a post-match interview. So he's always out there wearing nothing but like his underwear, and he doesn't have a great body. He's got an old man body, and he's bald. Like, Dory Funk's one of those guys that's looked 60 in every match I've ever seen him in my life. He finally comes out here this week, and he's in a suit and a cowboy hat. He looked like he was in his early 30s for the first time ever.
I just loaded Dory Funk's webpage. It still has frames. It's a little out of date. So Dory's out there in his suit, and he says, some of you fans have heard some misinformation that I stole the Florida championship belt, but that's not true. I am the rightful champion.
Where the hell's Rotunda?
Well, it's funny you should ask, because Dory here asks, if I'm not the champion, and he stops, and he looks to his left, and there's no Mike Rotunda over there, and he looks to his right, and there's no Mike Rotunda over there, only then does he lift up the belt. Wanted to make sure the coast was clear. Says, if I have the belt, I must be the champion. I pinned Mike Rotunda fair and square. I'm not giving the belt back no matter what he says, no matter what the NWA says. And in fact, I've got a lot of title defenses coming up against Bugsy McGraw and Kevin Sullivan and Blackjack Mulligan.
Listen, I'm a fair man. When Raw does shit like this, I berate them. I'm going to do the same thing here. Why didn't this guy come out later in the show? Like, the Rotunda segment was one segment earlier.
Yeah.
And the babyface vowed he would do whatever it took. I'm going to do whatever it takes to get that belt back.
But not in 10 minutes.
A fucking guy comes
right
out
now,
10
I need a
minutes
shower.
later, and Rotunda is nowhere to be found. At least say he's in the shower.
This was such a weird show. I don't know if the bash was still going on, but their whole crew, almost entirely, their whole crew was out of the building. So they had to bring in guys. The whole show was filled with guys from Florida and the UWF, as we shall get into. This next match is going to take a while.
Oh, my
Y'all may
God.
want to sit down if you need a beverage or a refreshing snack or a bathroom break. Now's a good time. Just hit pause and go do that. Lasertron and Kendall Windham.
Stop right there. Where is Jimmy Valiant?
Lasertron used to team with Jimmy Valiant.
What happened?
Well,
I mean, Lasertron's still a babyface. Jimmy Valiant's still a babyface. Where is he? Why was he replaced with Kendall Windham?
it may have been a deliberate attempt to go with the steepest downgrade in tag team partners of all time. It's my only explanation. But you had the skinny cowboy, who's the little brother, not nearly as good a wrestler as the other skinny cowboy, with the robot or laser tag obsessive or whatever the hell Lasertron is. They were competing against the team of Dexter Westcott and, most importantly,
Yes.
Dale LaPerouse.
Dale LaPerouse.
Now, those of you who've been listening to this show for some time know that each week when we review this program, I do my best. I may have missed one, but I try to name the worst wrestler of all time of the week in every show. Kendall Windham has won that award at least once. Dexter Westcott has won that award, I believe, twice. I could be mistaken, but they're very horrible. Let me tell you, on their worst day, in this world or in the afterlife, at no point on any plane of existence will they not be worlds and worlds better than the horror that is Dale LaPerouse.
Kendall Windham looked like Barry Windham in his prime. He looked like Ric Flair working with Dale LaPerouse here. This guy couldn't do anything. This guy couldn't go up for a body slam. It's one thing to not be able to run the ropes. He couldn't even take off without waving his arms in a wacky manner.
A tip on rope running. It's not really a natural thing. A lot of people do it wrong if you've never done it before. But Dale LaPerouse did the same thing every time. His opponent would push his back into the top rope, and they give him a little tug on his left arm. Dale would leap off his left leg. He would raise his knee high into the air. He would raise his right arm high into the air, as if he was trying to deliver a flying knee strike to an invisible man. Every time he did this. He dead-weighted Lasertron on a body slam, and
Lasertron just turned it into a side backbreaker.
kind of, you can deadweight, for example, Brock Lesnar, and he'll get you up anyway. If you deadweight Hector Guerrero, he's going to have some trouble. The epitome of all this.
I don't know what happened here. I had a theory, but based on how long the match went, I just don't know what happened.
About a minute in, and I already, at this point, by the way, decided that Dale LaPerouse was the worst wrestler of all time of the week. Kendall Windham hits the lariat. It's the finishing hold of both himself and his brother Barry. And he goes to make a cover, and the ref counts 1, and the ref counts 2, and Dale LaPerouse, he kicks his legs.
He basically kicked out.
Basically, except neither of his shoulders actually came up. So the ref just sort of
Well, he must have,
stops.
because the ref stopped counting.
The ref did stop counting. So then Kendall, apparently upset his finish had been killed, tried to... It may have been a shoot.
But see, here's what's weird. So he hits the lariat, and Dale LaPerouse kicks out, and Kendall doesn't just go for something else. He tries to pin the guy.
Yes.
The guy's fighting to not get pinned. And I'm like, dude, stay the fuck down. What's going on here? And then, after trying and failing to legitimately pin Dale LaPerouse, the match kept going for like another 5 minutes.
Yes.
So the only thing that I can figure is that Dale LaPerouse fucked it up, and the heels or the babyface just decided, well, we're gonna just beat the shit out of this fucking guy. He manages to get a blind tag, a legit blind tag. He reaches out his hand and tags in his buddy. He's probably trying to just get the hell out of the ring. They do a couple of spots with Dexter, and then Dexter, I guess, is told, get this fucker back in here again. They tag him back in, and they just keep working. This was worse than War Games, I think.
Oh, for sure. For sure. When he tagged out that first time, and I said, thank God Dexter Westcott is back in. I never thought I would say that. I didn't know it was possible to say that. They do eventually tag Dale LaPerouse back in. He does more flying knees to invisible men off the ropes. And then finally it's time for the real finish. Now I shall tell you, listeners, what the plan was. Kendall's going to grab him by the head, run him across the ring, ram his head into the turnbuckle. Then he's going to grab him in a headlock, hit a bulldog, and pin him. I mentioned earlier, rope running is not a natural thing, and if you've never done it before, you'll look silly. I suspect 95% of people within the sound of my voice right now, with zero training provided at all, if you have watched any amount of wrestling, you and your buddy could get in a ring and do this spot to a reasonable degree right now. Kendall Windham grabs Dale LaPerouse, throws his head into the turnbuckle, and then time just freezes. And he tries to get one arm over Dale's head, and then the other, and Dale may have been legitimately trying to fight him off. I'm not sure. They danced there in the corner for what felt like an hour, and Kendall finally hits his bulldog and pins Dale LaPerouse.
Watch him on the show next week. How could they ever bring this guy back? One of the all-time great horrible matches.
Seriously. Dale LaPerouse is the worst wrestler of all time of the week. He may be the worst wrestler of all time of the week of all time.
That is true.
Yeah, in all seriousness, in any venue, at any level, Dale LaPerouse may be the worst wrestler I have ever seen. I've seen indie shows.
I feel like we've said this many times.
No.
You may be right here.
I've seen indie shows with 12 people in the stands, and I was on the card, and all those people may have been better wrestlers than Dale LaPerouse. This was inconceivably bad.
It was very, very bad. But I enjoyed it. I mean, I laughed.
I laughed a lot.
I laughed uproariously.
It's one of those things where...
You know how many times when we rewound that pinfall to try to figure out what the hell was going on there?
It wasn't funny then. It was a
You
mystery.
thought it was just a forearm. I was like, no, that was his finish.
Well,
and the guy kept trying to avoid being pinned.
Because Kendall Windham also sucks, I cannot distinguish between his flying forearm and his lariat. But as
this was
you noted...
definitely a lariat.
As you noted, we on review, it was definitely a lariat. But as you noted, Kendall Windham compared to Dale LaPerouse is... I don't even know. He is Ric Flair on a good day. Lightning Express versus Cougar J and Tommy Angel. For a little bit here. I can see you just looking around. As you have noted, Brad Armstrong and Tim Horner are two of the most boring, at least in doing these kind of jobber matches, these squash matches. They get that headlock and they just lie there.
Dude, I heard for years... Oh, why didn't they do more with Brad Armstrong? He's so funny. And God bless him, he's passed on. But these guys went out there, and when they first came out, the crowd went nuts for him. They're cheering, they're going crazy, and they hit the ring, and it's all arm bars and headlocks. It was like a fucking 205 Live match. Just goes on and on and on. I seriously may have fell asleep. I don't know the finish. I don't care. They cut a good old white meat Southern Boys babyface promo afterwards.
Well, sort of.
This sucked.
Sort of.
Everything about this sucked.
First of all, they're the UWF Tag Team Champions. They talk about how much they love the fan support and how much the fans follow them from here in Atlanta over to the UWF. So they start calling out their rivals over there, including Akbar, Not Skandor Akbar, just Akbar. Big Bubba.
Oh, man, I thought he was talking about Admiral Akbar.
Maybe he was.
Thank God you cleared that up for me.
I hadn't thought of that. He might have been.
It's the first thing I thought.
Big
I didn't
Bubba.
really think that, but...
He mentions the team of Eddie Gilbert and Terry Taylor. And Tim Horner says, Eddie Gilbert and Terry Taylor, you think you deserve a title shot? But you don't, and you're not going to get one. And he leaves. And I thought, what? That's your fighting champion? Jesus Christ. Terry Taylor versus the Italian Stallion.
So apparently Terry Taylor turned heel.
Yes.
And Italian Stallion's a good worker, so this actually was a pretty good match. Taylor gave him a lot, reversed the cradle, pulled the tights for the pin. They cut to a crowd shot to avoid the full moon.
Yeah.
It was enjoyable enough, and Terry cut a decent heel promo. It's another one of those guys that, granted, I haven't seen a lot of him. I mean, we're just now starting to watch all of this stuff, and he went all over the place, but, you know, he went to WWF, and they gave him the Red Rooster gimmick, and people were, like, up in arms, can't believe it. And granted, it was a stupid gimmick they shouldn't have given the guy, but, I mean, there really was nothing here that made me think, my God, this guy would have been an all-time legend had he not become a rooster. He was solid.
Only two things I can add to this are that Terry Taylor came out to a generic network version of Let the Music Play by Shannon, which I had to look up who did this, but it's a classic 1980s one-hit wonder. And then he cuts his promo at the end, and I'm like 90% sure, because he had this robe forever, and I'm pretty sure eventually it found its way into the hands of one Bobby Roode, because I believe Bobby Roode was wearing this in many episodes of Impact. Other than that, yes, this is a fine pro wrestling.
I will say that when he said his tag team partner was Eddie Gilbert, and they wanted to beat the team of Lightning Express for the WWF World Tag Titles, I was all for it.
Yes.
Please. You and Eddie Gilbert would be a far superior team to Tim Horner and Brad Armstrong.
He also ran down Chris Adams, as we shall get, will come up shortly.
Man.
Ivan Koloff and Raging Bull versus George South and Rocky King.
Bull looking out of shape. Was I the only one?
He's never exactly been Rick Rude.
No, but flabby, soft.
These jobbers also got a lot of offense, especially monkey flips.
Hey, these were two good jobbers, so they had a very, very professional squash match.
Yeah.
Which is not as exciting as an unprofessional squash match, which is way more fun.
Do you remember when Buddy would always criticize us and many others for, if you're on offense, and if you got a guy down, and you pick him up and do a move, why would you do this? He's already down.
Yeah, just cover the guy.
Yeah. Bull here would pick guys up and throw them back down. And these announcers loved it. They
Well,
said,
you know.
They said he was an offensive wrestler.
When you outclass your opponent, you can just keep picking him up and throwing him down again,
I guess so.
just to get some work in.
I just thought offensive wrestler was 1980s code for getting his shit in. Ivan got the win with a Russian sickle. Kevin Sullivan came out for a promo.
All right, so fill me in here. Like, he was a babyface, right? This was so bizarre.
I
because
don't think so, but I'm far from sure.
every single, like, I only remember Kevin Sullivan as a heel. Mm-hmm. But this was the most flamboyant Kevin Sullivan I've ever seen. That's the only word I could think of to describe him. He was being very, very flamboyant. And he was like bearing the Horsemen.
Well,
now, granted, the fans love the Horsemen here in this building, but the way he was bearing all of them and being so flamboyant, I thought, is this guy a babyface? What is going on here?
Well, first he began by talking about a bunch of shit going on in Florida. And it's funny that the Crockett brought in all these guys from different promotions and said, I'll give you a chance to plug your shows and your programs on my show. But no one bothered to really, they just assumed all the fans at home knew what was going on. And maybe they did, but I didn't. So Sullivan was talking about everything going on in Florida. He mentions Dusty Rhodes. He mentions Blackjack Mulligan. He mentions the Sheep Herders. And by the end, in all seriousness, I have zero idea who he was teaming with and who he was feuding with. Maybe all of them. Maybe this is a very strange promotion where everyone teamed and feuded with each other. Then he begins to run down the Horsemen one by one. Makes fun of Arn for saying, I have bill collectors tougher than you. Says Lex Luger has 5-pound lips. And then he makes fun of Tully Blanchard because he's had 2 valets in less than a year. He can't keep a woman around. What goes around comes around, Kevin. And finally, he ran down Flair, demanded a world championship match in Florida.
All right, so, I mean, he definitely ends up a heel. This is abundantly clear, but apparently, like, very, very soon, the Varsity Club will be forming.
That is great news.
With Rotunda and Rick Steiner.
The Varsity Club ruled.
And Mike Rotunda was a babyface here on this show.
On this show, yes.
I guess we'll see what happens, but this was just so bizarre.
They exist for sure by the Clash of the Champions, which is in April. So we've got some time in the next 7-8 months. Yep. Actually, this is still August. It could be 8 or 9 months. Chris Adams versus Colt Steele.
What a great name, Colt Steele.
Colt Steele has the name of a 1980s porn star and the mustache to match.
Colt Cabana was trained by Ace Steele. Isn't that weird?
How about that?
Yeah, this was Colt Steele.
I was watching Colt Steele, and I'm thinking, this guy's... I made fun of him, but he's got a good look. He's a big dude. He can move. He is Shawn Michaels compared to Dale LaPerouse.
God. Well, everyone knows Chris Adams' story. Steve Austin's first trainer. Mm-hmm. I mean, his girlfriend overdosed on alcohol and GHB in 2001. She died. He was charged with manslaughter. Then a few months later, him and his buddy were drunk and roughhousing, and his friend said he got out of control and shot him in the chest and killed him.
Yeah.
Another world-class curse.
Yes, it is.
And this is also from Mike Mooneyham that I did not know about. In 1986, Adams made headlines for an incident on this is a year before what we just watched. An incident on an American Airlines flight heading for Dallas. Adams was returning from a Caribbean wrestling tour when engine trouble delayed the plane in Puerto Rico. When the plane took off again, a drunken Adams became belligerent after a flight attendant asked him to sit down. Quote, "I make 25 times the money you do, and no one like you is going to tell me what to do." And then he head-butted the co-pilot.
Oops.
Can you imagine if he would have done that in 2017? He got off with misdemeanor assault.
He would never be on a plane again.
Dude.
So they had a long time to kill, and Adams is out there hitting random moves. What have I not done yet? I'll do a pile driver here in the middle of this match for no reason. Then a small package. It goes on and on for a while, and finally, Colt hits a suplex. He misses a top rope elbow. Adams hits a super kick, and he wins. As soon as the bell counts 3, Terry Taylor attacks him from behind, goes for a backdrop, but Adams lands on his feet, fires back, and sends him packing. Then Adams cuts a promo saying Terry Taylor is a low-down, low-life, slithering snake.
Man, that's some fighting words.
Said Taylor was once a decent guy, then he disappeared, came back, set up his own press conference as a ruse to attack Adams from behind. And now it's war. And I don't like that, but the English have been at war for 2,000 years. He listed 1,000 cities where they could fight, and he vowed to take Taylor out. That was a good promo. Ronnie Garvin versus Keith Steinborn.
David Crockett begins, and I quote, "Oh dear. Ladies and gentlemen, you're going to see a guy get beat up." That's what happened.
Somewhere in there, he clarified. I don't know if he was going through his notes or if he was just confused, but he just says, "This is Keith Steinborn?" Like he was expecting more. Ronnie did in fact beat him up, but it was not the worst beating Ronnie Garvin's ever given somebody. It wasn't even the worst beating on the show. Slapped him a lot, spanked him some, won with a knockout punch. He joins Tony for a promo. Thanks all the fans for cheering for him.
It's actually another good promo. Vowed to win the title. Mm-hmm. Talked about his believers. He said, "I want all the people who believe I can beat Flair at all of these different buildings to stand up when I come down to the ring. And if you don't believe, you can stay seated."
That's right.
But I believe 99% will be standing. And he made a very interesting point. He says, Flair's going to sink. He's going to lose it all. I am not going to come out here and make a fool of myself by saying that I'm going to beat Ric Flair. I'm going to actually do it. Because in the old days, if you vowed to beat the champion, you did.
Otherwise, you're a geek.
Otherwise, you were a shitty babyface.
I will not make a fool of myself by losing to Ric Flair. It was a good promo. Kevin Sullivan versus Larry Stevens. Kevin beat the uckfay out of this guy.
Man, Kevin Sullivan versus Garvin. What a battle that would be.
It would be stiff. Kevin beat him and beat him and beat him. And in my new favorite finish of all time, He's given him a solid beating already. Gives him a gut-wrench suplex, which may have been a shoot. He grabbed this man around the waist, lifted him high in the air, turned him over, and threw him down as hard as he could. Then he got the mount, just like in UFC. Then he threw in mounted punches, just like in UFC, lefts and rights. And then he transitioned to a lateral press and got the pin. He pinned him.
I don't even think he left the mount. I think he just punched him and then laid on him and pinned
Maybe
him.
just leaned over.
Yeah.
The point is, he got the pinfall via mounted punches.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
He hit a move, the guy kicked out, so he sat on him and punched him and then pinned him.
Yeah.
It was quite great,
It was amazing. Bugsy McGraw versus Terry Jones.
Listen, I know that Bugsy, I'm sure he's a nice guy. I cannot handle 1987 babyface, clowny Bugsy McGraw. It's just the worst.
It's not funny. It's not, I don't know. It's not impressive.
He won with a big splash. Here's
not
the key to
entertaining.
all of this.
Yeah.
He wins, and they go to do a promo with him, and I'm like, oh, God. But then the music hits, and out comes Jimmy Valiant with flowers. Flowers! Him and Bugsy McGraw, they hug, and they begin to dance together. And then Jimmy goes to cut a promo, and it suddenly struck me, when these two guys are on screen together, Bugsy McGraw is a guy, he's a fella pretending to be crazy, whereas Jimmy Valiant is legitimately out of his mind. Like when you watch him on screen, one guy's acting, one guy's not. Now, granted, it probably helps that I once had Jimmy Valiant on Observer Live, or one of my shows, and he was in character the entire time. Probably helps with my belief that he's legitimately insane. But yeah, it's just, I don't buy this Bugsy McGraw gimmick for a second. It's a guy pretending to be a crazy guy, and it sucks.
They did promise. First, Jimmy Valiant made a bunch of jokes about how crazy Bugsy was. Then he promised, we will be in every town together. Well, that's terrifying. It's a lot of towns. Freebirds versus Thunderfoots 1 and 2. Thunderfoots are actually teaming together this week, which is shocking. Terry Gordy was awesome in this match. It was short. Freebirds tried the backdrop powerbomb combo and totally fucked it up and may have killed this Thunderfoot, but thankfully Terry Gordy was a mighty beast. And through sheer muscle alone, with no leverage, was able to hold him and control him and drop him on his back and not his head.
You know, this Terry Gordy. First off, Thunderbird number 1, or no, Thunderfoot, not Thunderbird.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. But whatever they were. Thunderfoot 1 and Thunderfoot 2. Again, they weren't the Thunder Feet or the Thunderfoots. Each man, they're a team, but when they team together, they're two guys.
Right.
Even though they're essentially twins.
Sure.
Just blows my mind. Terry Gordy, I know that after the Big Show Braun Strowman cage match, there were all these people coming out of the woodwork talking about how Big Show was by far the greatest big man of all time. And this is no disrespect to the Big Show, but Terry Gordy was awesome.
Yeah.
Terry Gordy was so awesome. Not to mention, what even counts as a big man? Like, is Big Show really a better all-around big man in the history of wrestling than The Undertaker? Nothing?
No. The answer is no. I thought it was a rhetorical question. No, Undertaker is a better wrestler. Well, at least at his peak, was a better wrestler than the Big Show. Anyway, they won this match, and then Hayes got about 20 seconds to cut a promo.
Dude, if that. They went to him, and he opened his mouth, and then they said, see you next week!
He made fun of Jim Cornette, and that was that. I will never forget Dale LaPerouse as long as I live.
Dale LaPerouse was the highlight of the 2 hours that we watched. And apparently I think he's going to be back, because a lot of these jobbers, if you try and Google their name, there's nothing that comes up, but boy, does Dale LaPerouse come up.
I honestly seem to think we've seen him before, and he wasn't quite this bad.
It's possible it came up because I've Googled him before. Mm-hmm. But yeah, if you type in Dale LaPerouse, I mean, yeah, it comes right up. Dale LaPerouse, wrestler.
LaPerouse. Lappy.
WrestlingData.com, JCP TV taping in Atlanta. All sorts of stuff here. So
yes, he was the worst wrestler of all time of the week of all time.
Yeah. Oh, man. Road Warriors versus Dale LaPerouse and Curtis Thompson. That's coming up. November 21, 87. So he does come back.
He's alive.
He'll be back. And apparently even worked WWF. Look at that. There's a match where Garvin beats up Lapérouse. That sounds awesome.
Yes, it does.
Man, oh man. All right, everybody.
And there will be gorilla shit all over the Omni.
Hey, did you say 87 or am I losing my mind?
August 29th, 1987.
All right. Not a very exciting show here, not going to lie.
It was a very up and down show.
Sure.
There was some good stuff. There was a lot of bad stuff.
Well, here we go.
Okay. Open with clips of Tully Blanchard wrestling Nikita Koloff. And Tony promised we would see the whole match later.
He wasn't lying. Sometimes we just see clips. We saw the whole match.
Almost all of it.
Yeah, we didn't see the very beginning.
Missed the very beginning and a couple of commercial breaks, but I'm sure we saw at least 90% of the match.
Yeah. Well, the commercial breaks, it was a tape.
I suppose that's true.
So yeah, they just stopped it and came back.
We had Lex Luger versus Cougar J in the opener. Should have been a tag team called Luger and the Cougar. Instead, what we got was Lex flexing, doing some hammer locks, some arm bars.
Hold after hold after hold after hold. Of all the people to work a hold-based style, never thought I'd see the day where every week I tune in to see Lex Luger doing holds.
It was a holds match.
At some point, I guess he just realized, what am I doing holds for? This sucks. Because, boy, 86, 87, this guy did a lot of holds.
Yeah. Cougar hit a couple of punches just so Lex could cut him off at the power slam. Then he hit the torture rack for the win. Shivani then interviewed Luger and J.J. Dillon.
It was very clear, by the way, about 5 minutes into this match, that this was a full 90-minute show. They had time to fill here today.
This whole show was a devotion to time filling.
Well, you had 90 minutes. And apparently a lot of guys weren't there, it looked like. Like the Rock and Rolls weren't there. The Horsemen weren't there. Like there were just a bunch of guys having matches for 90 minutes.
So JJ and Lex cut a promo about Dusty Rhodes and his use of the Weaver lock.
Yeah, the illegal chokehold.
An illegal chokehold, they claimed. A blatant chokehold. Lex had a great line where he says, Dusty Rhodes, I don't care for you personally, and I detest you professionally. That just made me laugh. Like he likes him less to work with than he does to hang out with.
There's a lot of people like that.
I guess that's true. I thought it was a really good promo, actually.
I'd say that's probably most people now that I think about it.
He talks about how he grew up with all the finer things in life, while Dusty grew up like the common folk. Lex grew up with Tchaikovsky. Dusty grew up with Johnny Cash and Merle Haggard.
Wait, who grew up with Tchaikovsky?
Well, listening to.
Who? Luger?
Yes.
Are you kidding me? What bullshit.
Still.
It's ridiculous. Hold a second. The whole storyline was Luger wanted to be a horseman. Mm-hmm. Luger could have grown up anyway. There was no upbringing required for Luger to join the Horsemen. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. He could have grown up listening to rock. He could have grown up a big fan of Ricky Nelson or any of these other 50s and 60s heartthrobs. Didn't have to grow up listening to classical music to be a horseman. Do you have to fill out a resume?
Yes, actually.
What do you listen to?
They're very
Merle Haggard.
Who they let in.
Shred that one.
Are you kidding me?
You kidding? It's ridiculous.
The Horsemen not let in anyone who listened to Johnny Cash from Merle Haggard.
You don't think that Arn Anderson listened to Johnny Cash? That's all Arn Anderson
wasn't actually. When I think about it, didn't Ric Flair personally plug David Allen Coe?
I'm sure he did.
Yeah, you may be right.
Yeah, this is preposterous. This was the worst promo of this guy's career.
Well, I thought it was a very good delivery of the promo.
Well, it's good delivery, of course, but it was ridiculous.
He may have told a fib or two. Told the director not to wind him up. Went off on Dusty Rhodes.
I believe he was wound up in the match, too, if I recall correctly. Probably. They told him to wrap it up.
And he just kept going?
And they told him to wrap it up here.
Yeah.
This Luger just needs to just finish this stuff off and get on with things.
He vowed to remain U.S. champion, chokehold or no chokehold. Jimmy Garvin versus John Savage. Never seen this John Savage fellow before. I'm looking at him. He had a physique. May have had the better physique in this match, in fact. He had gear. He had a wacky haircut, like where it looked like he shaved his sideburns and just kept going up. And I thought, hey, this guy has put some effort into his appearance to stand out. And then he went on offense.
Let me tell you something about this first move that we're going to talk about here. I'm watching this match, and this guy throws the worst knee lift I've ever seen in my life.
Unless...
And I was like, we got to watch this again. And I rewound it, and the second time, I wasn't sure it was a knee lift, I thought it might have been an uppercut. Let's think about this for a second. This guy did a move where I'm not sure if it was a knee strike or an uppercut.
Yeah.
Try to fathom that.
It is
How
either.
the fuck could you not be able to tell one from the other?
Well, we can say for certain it was either the worst knee lift of all time or the worst elbow of all time.
Uppercut.
Either way.
So now we got 3 moves it may have been. We don't know what this move was.
We are certain it sucked. And it was great because, like, as soon as he threw this thing, Jimmy gave him one move, he hit that, and Jimmy said, okay, you're done. And he grabbed him, hit a brainbuster, and pinned him.
Yeah, I could not believe he gave this guy offense. And he probably... I mean, Jimmy probably knew nothing about the guy. He was like, man, brother, hit me with something. The guy hit him with something.
He
was
sure
like,
did.
All right, you're done. That's it.
Then it was time for Jimmy to get a promo. Now, Jimmy right now doesn't have a lot going on. They've mentioned before he's been teaming with Barry Windham for, like, to challenge the Midnight Express, I think. But I mean, at this point in time, he's low on the...
Well, his brother.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
So what he did instead was, first he just called out the Horsemen, all of them, for what Lex had said. He said, the fans are great, country music's great, Aretha Franklin's great. Not that the Horsemen had said anything about Aretha Franklin, but he said Dusty Rhodes would never use a chokehold. The NWA would never stand for Dusty Rhodes using a chokehold. Lex is just making excuses. He's been hanging out with Ric Flair. That's how he learned to make excuses. And speaking of Ric Flair, and then he transitioned to talking about how his brother's Ronnie's got Flair's number. So they've been training in camp all week. He's never seen Ronnie training so hard and so dedicated. Every day he's running 6 miles for cardio. And the other day they did their 6-mile run, and Jimmy turned around to say, great job, Ronnie, and all he saw was dust because Ronnie was off to run 6 more miles. Fans cheered this dedication. And Jimmy promised Ronnie would soon be world champion. Can he just be the universal babyface manager and cut promos for everyone on the roster?
What's amazing about it was he cut the most babyface promo you've ever seen. How in the world was this guy ever a heel? Now, granted, we have not been watching a lot of World Class, but even when he debuted in this territory as a heel, he was a babyface.
Basically.
He was the most likable heel on the entire roster.
He was so entertaining as a heel, you wanted to cheer him.
Yeah, what was there to boo? That he was cocky?
He's proud of having a beautiful wife?
Yeah, like, well, that's Dusty Rhodes, right? And that guy's way more cocky than Jimmy Garvin was.
Well, yeah.
I just can't believe this guy could pull off being a heel at all. He was so likable.
He is the best. It was time for Tully versus Nikita for the TV title. It was joined in progress, but still very early. And I believe it went through 3 commercial breaks, if I count right. So Nikita was in control the whole time until he went for the sickle, and Tully dodged, and Nikita went flying over the top ropes to the floor for the heat.
I think it was the middle ropes.
Maybe the middle ropes.
Top rope would have been that disqualification.
Well, not if he threw himself over.
That's true.
But regardless, he ended up outside the ring.
That's a judgment call by the ref, though.
Yeah. Who was a Hebner, by the way.
He sure was a Hebner.
Yeah. So, for the next several minutes, they did about nothing, but boy, howdy were these fans into it. It was so awesome. Nikita hit the sickle out of nowhere, but JJ was distracting the ref. And by the time the ref turned around, it had been a good 5 or 7 seconds, and he counts 1 and 2, but then Tully kicks out. Nikita was trying to fight out of a chin lock, but he hits the ropes, and when he comes off, Tully pushes him by, and Nikita goes flying out of the ring again. They get back in there. They begin to do headlocks and head scissor counters like the match had just started, and then Nikita hit the most dramatic backslide of all of 1987. And then Tully starts chopping Nikita. There's clouds of sweat flying into the air, but Nikita's no-selling everything. He's just a monster now. They actually went to a break during this no-selling comeback. Yeah, Nikita hooking a figure 4, but JJ reaching in to rake Nikita's eyes to break up the hold. Here is where the announcers said they were nearing the end of the 25-minute time limit. Kind of random. So Tully keeps trying to crawl away. Nikita's pulling him back in. Finally, JJ grabs Tully's hands. Nikita drags them both into the ring, rams their heads together. The ref gets bumped, and out comes Arn Anderson, who passes a gimmick to Tully. And Tully clonks Nikita with the gimmick. He makes a cover. And Earl counts 1, Earl counts 2, and there's Barry Windham to stop the count. He will not allow this travesty to occur. Tully is outraged. He starts punching Barry. Barry starts punching back right in front of the ref. who does not disqualify anyone. In the melee, Nikita hits JJ with a sickle. He picks up the weapon. He clunks Tully with it. He makes the cover. The ref counts 3. There's a new TV champion, and this crowd is so ridiculously loud, I can only assume that the Earth's orbit was permanently affected.
You know, this was like a great reaction for the finish and that sort of thing, but my God, what bullshit. This finish was such out-and-out bullshit. First, you have a guy hitting the ring to stop the referee's count. That should be an immediate disqualification. Then he starts fighting with the guy.
Yeah.
They're exchanging punches in the middle of the ring. The ref does nothing about this.
No.
Nikita gives JJ the sickle. He kills the referee. That should be a DQ. He puts the gimmick on. He punches Tully. He gets the pin. How many bullshit finishes have we seen from this company that get reversed the next day? And this one is allowed to stand?
I guess so.
This was too much overthinking. Like, it wasn't like the heel was winning. The babyface was winning. Number one, can't you just put the babyface over? Can't Nikita Koloff just beat Tully Blanchard? And if you want to do something where, like, the heels try something diabolical and they get theirs in the end, that's fine. But not like this. This was, as a fan, Tully Blanchard, the heel, got fucked 6 ways from Sunday to lose the television title. That's not fair.
A title he had held for 260-plus days.
Wow.
Very long title reign, which is part of the reason the pop was so huge. Then, because Nikita's not a dick and he has friends, the entire babyface locker room comes out to congratulate him. From the very top guy, Ronnie Garvin, to the Kendall Windhams and Lasertrons of the world.
Let's not denigrate Lasertron. This guy was a champion.
That's true, he was.
Yeah.
Kendall Windham's the bottom.
Kendall Windham is very near the bottom. Although I have a new respect for him after that match with Dale Torborg.
Well, that's Kendall Windham of the future.
That is true.
So they cut from this right to Dusty Rhodes in the studio.
That was so ironic. It's like we go from such a bullshit finish to Dusty Rhodes,
who has to make everything about himself.
Oh, my God. You know, I got to say something here, because somebody on the board mentioned this. Because I've been ranting about Dusty Rhodes and how he's the most just cocky. I mean, what kind of babyface? Here's the thing. Someone goes, Brian, all you do is cry about how nowadays all of the wrestlers have to pretend like they're poor. And if they get fired, they'll be unemployed and they'll be in poverty. Finally, we have a guy who lets the world know that he's actually a rich pro wrestler and you're mad about it. Well, what's going on over there?
Just keep going.
If you could see what Vinny was doing right now as he's trying to tell me to just keep going.
I'm just plugging in my computer.
Looks like he's putting together some sort of...
I looked over and I saw my laptop was probably not going to make it, and Brian seemed to be on a roll. I thought perhaps he's on a roll. He'll just let me...
No, I got distracted, just like the referee. Anyway, this person was ranting. They didn't understand why I denigrate Dusty for telling us that he has money, when I'm mad normally at wrestlers who pretend like they're poor. This guy doesn't watch this show, clearly. This fucking Dusty Rhodes, every single fucking week, he comes out here on television and he has to tell us how much money he has, and how he's rich, and how he's famous, and how he's the best. It's not just like, we know the guy's rich. There's a difference between pretending to be a famous wrestler who, like, makes a lot of money doing it, and going out there and flaunting your wealth every week.
Yes.
Like, the Horsemen come out here and flaunt their wealth. They're not as annoying as Dusty. And they're the heels.
The fine line between confidence and arrogance.
It's not even arrogance. It's like insecurity. That's what this is.
Well, that too, actually, yeah.
Like,
but he's left all of these lines way behind him in the past.
I got it, buddy. You got a lot of money. You make more than everybody else. You have lived the American dream, okay? Can we stop fucking talking about it? And then he buries Luger for it. Luger, you are not financially secure. You are not the heartbeat of America like I am. I can do whatever I want, he says. I'm a legend. I'm the heartbeat of America. He's screaming because there are all these Horseman fans in the front row that are screaming at him and holding up the four fingers, and he's trying to shout over them because he's insecure that they don't like him. I'm like, oh my God, this is embarrassing. Was it not embarrassing?
It was just Dusty. Dusty being Dusty. Speaking of Kendall Windham,
I was embarrassed.
You know who should be embarrassed? Most of the people in this next match.
Oh, well, the fat mod squatter.
Maybe it's just the one guy.
I mean, Kendall was okay.
Kendall Windham and Italian Stallion versus the Mod Squad.
Yes.
Someone put this match on paper. First of all, it should have been clear to everyone on paper, Italian Stallion is far and away the best guy in this match.
Yes.
By far. And if it wasn't clear on paper, it sure was clear when they started to wrestle.
Are you aware, by the way, that the Italian Stallion hails from Italy?
That's what they said.
Yeah, Tony alerted me to that.
Breaking news.
Young man at Italy, the Italian Stallion. It's like, huh.
Remember, there was a line on Nitro when Tenay was explaining some history lesson, and Sabisco just says, how do you know that? Like, he was annoyed Tenay had done his homework and research.
That's right.
Here, we learn that the Italian Stallion is from Italy.
My other favorite, and I love Tony Schiavone, but there were some funny lines this evening. The Italian Stallion, who hails from Italy, tried an O'Connor roll on Spike.
Yes.
Spike is so fat and he's so round
So inflexible.
that he could not stay in the cradle and he just rolled over like Humpty Dumpty.
All you have to do is roll to your back.
He couldn't.
That's it.
He's round. And so he rolled to his back and he just kept rolling. They tip over and fall down, and Tony said, "Great escape."
See, you saw it differently than I did. I saw Stallion go for this O'Connor roll, and all the Mod Squad, I think it was Spike.
It was definitely Spike.
All Spike had to do was drop to his ass, roll to his shoulders, and Stallion would cradle his legs up and hold him there. But it's like it was not even that he was fat, it was like he couldn't bend his neck at all, so his neck pressed up, it kicked out, and they just fell down.
The great irony is there is nothing sharp about Spike.
That's true. Well,
He's totally round everywhere.
flat top.
It's not sharp.
The edges.
I guess kind of.
It's the best I can
That's
do.
the closest.
He is a very round, rotund man. So they're doing this match, and
It's going on forever.
Stallion gets thrown outside, and they cut him off, and then Schiavone says, I've just been told 5 minutes have elapsed in this match, and that means there's 5 minutes left.
10-minute time limit on TV.
And this should have been a clear sign.
Oh, it was. Oh, man. The moment he said we're 5 minutes in, there's a 10-minute time
Why did we
limit.
not just go for a walk?
I was like, no, please.
Go down and talk
really?
to your
This
wife or
is your
something?
draw? Not Mike Jackson at the end of the show. This is your draw?
Now, it turns out the Mod Squad, between the two of them, don't have enough offense to fill 5 minutes of TV time. That's all they had to do. 5 minutes, split two ways, with times like double teams and stuff. But no. So they just chinlocked the fuck out of this guy. They squeezed him and squeezed him and squeezed him and squeezed him. No actual motion. So I guess it wasn't even actually 5 minutes. It was about 4 minutes and 40 seconds. Because finally Kendall Windham gets the hot tag. He runs wild for 20 seconds before the bell rings. The only notable thing about this comeback is the skinniest wrestler of the 1980s did the diving shoulder tackle, like the Road Warriors. This looked like an actual spear. Like a trident thrown by Poseidon, King of the Sea.
That guy should have been Spike.
I guess so.
He's all corners.
He is all corners, all sharp edges,
Sharp
jagged angles.
everywhere.
So the bell rings. Okay, it's a time limit draw.
Oh,
At this point, the Mod Squad beats the hell out of both babyfaces. They hit their finish, the top rope elbow on Italian Stallion, and they leave him laying.
yeah, you want to know why? I'll tell you why.
Okay.
Because this 10-minute draw on television was designed to set up a match to take around the loop. So you can buy your ticket to see this hot feud continue throughout the live event circuit.
Well, there's a million things I can say to this.
I'm just telling
I'm
you.
going to hold my thoughts for now and get into this next segment because they carry over. Tony Schiavone plugged the Bash 87 War Games VHS tape and that glamorous, oversized
Yes.
VHS clamshell box. A lot of you
Yes.
youngsters have no idea what we're talking about here.
No.
A VHS video cassette was a pretty big thing in and of itself. It was like I don't know, 8 inches by 4 inches. It was a sizable object.
The box your iPhone comes in, it was like 4 times that size.
Yes.
For a video cassette.
Yes, these boxes were massive. So he's holding up this VHS box the size of a hallway mirror or a fine art portrait. This massive thing. And, you can buy it and watch both War Games matches and all the other highlights of the Bash.
In fact, if you have an iPad, the box that your iPad came in is about the size of this old VHS tape.
One of the bigger ones.
Yeah.
One of the bigger ones, yeah. So he finishes up, and who should show up?
Oh, please, Vinny, please. You missed the most important thing. Tony says, War Games, 1987. The most incredible match in the history of professional wrestling.
That's right. That's what he promised.
In 100 years, this was the most incredible match in the history of professional wrestling. It's incredible.
Not even arguably.
No.
Just factually.
It is.
The most incredible match.
And then he has to explain that Starrcade's coming.
Starrcade 87.
And they've promised that somehow it's going to be even bigger.
That's right.
And I'm like, well, that's impossible. I guess they could exceed the most incredible match. But man,
stacked War Games.
That's
stacked cages.
4 cages.
Yeah. 4 rings, yes.
4 rings, 2 cages.
Now then.
Which WCW tried once.
There's some ridiculous.
It was also the most incredible match in the history of pro wrestling. In a completely different way.
The Alliance to End Hulkamania?
Yes.
What the hell was that called?
The Triple Tower
Doomsday
of Doom.
Cage.
Doomsday Cage match.
Yeah. That was not as good as War Games. Maybe any War Games. So, as I was saying, once Tony is done with his shill, who should come out to speak their mind but the Mod Squad? Now, you will recall, just prior to this, they had a boring-ass draw with Kendall Windham and the Italian Stallion. So they come out here to plug what they've got on their mind. What challenge are they going to throw down? And they did not challenge Kendall Windham. They did not challenge the Italian Stallion. No. First, they said, we are tired of being overlooked, so every time we wrestle, we're going to hurt somebody. Okay, fine, that's great. And then they call out the Rock and Roll Express, and they demand World Tag Team Championship opportunities. You fat fucks couldn't beat Kendall Windham and the Italian Stallion. And you're calling out the Rock and Roll Express.
Yes.
I was baffled. Like, even as a 12-year-old boy in 1987, I'd like to think I would have been just confused and bewildered by this. Took some gumption, I'll say that. I then had Jimmy Valiant versus Tim Hardy.
My favorite part of the week. So what I got here today, I think I've got Jimmy Valiant's WWE Network theme here.
All right.
But I'm not sure. I haven't played it yet. So let's find out if this is it.
Okay. Always good to learn on the air.
Yeah. All right, this is it. I'm going to play this in the background here while I recap every move in this match. Are you ready?
All set.
All right. Eye rake. Toss the dude outside by his hair. Run the guy headfirst into the post. Illegal closed fist to the face. Thumb to the throat. Throw the guy into the buckles by the hair. Back rake. Our absolute first fucking legal move of the match. A club to the back. A back rake. Throw him into the buckle by the hair. Thumb to the neck. Arm wringer. Pull him down by the hair. Yell at Tony that they're in love as Tony refuses to sell it. Kick to the gut. Throw the guy into the buckle by the hair. Snapmare and neck hold. Elbow. Boogie elbow. 1, 2, 3.
Well, that is in fact every move Jimmy Valiant did in this match.
I was filled with fury when he finally hit the guy with a forearm. Because I thought, you know what? I always recap the moves of Jimmy Valiant. And always, without fail, always, there's like one non-heel tactic.
Sure, one legal maneuver.
Yes. He had gone 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 moves. And granted, this was a long Jimmy Valiant match. I thought, is this fucking guy going to do the entire match with only illegal holds? I was so excited. But then he brought in the legal clubbering forearm to the back, and I was very disappointed.
That is his legal move. A snapmare would be a legal wrestling move.
You know, the irony is, his finish is a legal move.
Yes. Well, that's why it works so well. It catches them off guard.
Well, it caught me off guard.
He gets them to look for all that cheating, And then when the guard's up for that, he hits him with a damn elbow.
This woke me up, I'll tell you that much. That last match.
We needed waking up, too. All right, you covered Boogie Woogie himself here, so I'm going to talk about two other people. The first is the little old lady in the front row.
Oh, my God.
Now, little old ladies are usually the best wrestling fans in the world. That's why we have one on our show. This little old lady was so unimpressed with Boogie Woogie Man.
Dude, this had to be Granny. This had to be Granny.
May have been.
This was a look on Granny's face every time Tim Flowers walked by at the Temple Theater. Am I wrong?
No, it's a fact.
She just wouldn't even make eye contact with the guy, and she just looked away in complete disgust.
The other person I want to talk about is Tim Hardy. Tim was not the worst wrestler I've ever seen. He was not even the worst wrestler on the show.
You know what's funny about this? I could not tell you one thing about Tim Hardy. Like, all I could do was watch Jimmy.
Well, that's fair.
I don't know what he looked like. I don't know what color his hair was. I don't know if he was fat. I don't know if he was skinny. I don't even know if he was a man or woman.
He was a man.
What can you tell me about Tim Hardy?
He was, like I said, not the worst wrestler I ever saw. There was a point, in fact, it may have been at the very end, when he gets whipped into the ropes, and he hit the ropes with his chest, and like spun in place and bounced off him. Other than that, he was totally fine. He was out there, and he's your standard skinny fat jobber. And he's got no knee pads, which is always creepy. No knee pads always makes your trunks look like underwear regardless. And then the trunks.
That's right.
The trunks.
Now I remember.
Were vivid purple with a thick white waistband.
Yeah, it was underwear.
This could not possibly have looked any more like underwear.
I remember this now. I remember you saying he's in his underwear. And I was like, Jesus Christ, he is. Now he's getting thrown headfirst into the post.
He's in his underwear with no knee pads and boots getting thrown into the post. And eventually he was pinned with a Boogie Woogie elbow. Oh, there was a third person. I must correct. Jimmy's finish is he does the back elbow to set up the big Boogie Woogie elbow where he runs basically in place and jumps high and elbows the guy. So he hits the back elbow to set up the Boogie Woogie elbow, and they cut to the front row, and there's a section of fans going crazy, one of whom was 1980s preppy guy with the perfectly gelled hair and the sunglasses indoors.
He's one of the Horseman fans.
He may have been.
I'm sure he was.
He may have been.
This reminds me, by the way.
What's happening? Brian has left his seat. He's digging through a box. Pulls out some fabric.
So we have a sponsor on Observer Live, ProWrestlingLoot.com.
ProWrestlingLoot.com.
Yeah, you pay $19.95 a month. They send you a mystery box.
They send you random wrestling stuff.
Yes. And so the one I opened on air, which was clearly designed for me, there's an autographed picture of Carlito in there. Okay. Now, the two big ones, they sent me Ric Flair trunks.
In what appear to be your size.
Clearly begging me to get back in the ring with Filthy.
Yes.
Which is not going to happen because I've retired. But I've got him anyway.
Powder blue with the stylized RF.
Now, they also sent this. It's a shirt that says, greatest of all time, just ask me. This is a 2XL.
Uh-oh. It's not for you.
So either they don't know how big I am, or this was sent to you. So I'm giving it to you.
Okay.
You now have a free greatest of all time, just ask me t-shirt. Look at that.
Oh, do you see the initials in the center?
What's it say?
That's a BH.
BH?
Bobby Heenan.
Oh, I see.
Yes.
Wow.
So thank you.
Wow, I hadn't noticed that. I just saw the greatest of all time.
I will take that.
All right, you got a free shirt there, buddy.
Oh,
that reminded me by thinking about Tim Hardy's trunks. The trunks that I got for less than $19.95 in that Pro Wrestling loot box were way better than those trunks that Tim Hardy was
They
wearing.
were. Those look like professional trunks. Not Tim Hardy's underwear.
Whitney came in here and she sit in this chair and she saw it and she pulled the trunks out. She said, "What are these?" I said, "Well, got a sponsor and they sent a box and those are wrestling trunks." And she goes, "You're supposed to wrestle in these?" And I was like, "I used to wrestle in Broken Heart. You've seen my old trunks."
Yeah.
She goes, "These are so thin."
Well,
maybe you're supposed to wear something underneath them. I don't know.
I would, yes. We had Ric Flair and the Horsemen cutting a promo from an arena somewhere. Not much to it.
Flair did say at one point that if you took all the money they had, put it in any bank account, they could live off the interest alone until 2030.
Apparently interest rates were higher back then.
Or he was spending less, because it turns out this was a lie.
Let me tell you something. He was not spending less.
That's true. Yeah.
He said they could live until 2030. Which, by the way, when he said it then, it seemed like the far future. They're goddamn near there.
Well, way more than halfway there.
12 years.
75%
His
of the way
interest,
there.
his money's going to run out in 12 years.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
I wonder how he'll adjust. Barbarian versus Rocky King. Tony is reading fan mail, sending out birthday wishes and happy anniversaries. And I missed where they were from, but he said hi to some fans who worked at a gas station. He wanted everyone to know that when wrestling was on, no one at the station was going to pump any gas. And I thought about it.
Well, clearly they'd have to be from Oregon then.
Possible.
Yeah.
I don't know where in Alabama in the 80s you may have had to had the gas station pump the gas for you. But all I could think was, imagine you're just in the sticks in the deep south. Just the banjo pickinest country you can imagine. And you pull up to one gas station in the middle of nowhere, and they got one pump, and you just got to get your gas and get the hell out of there. And you go in to buy some gas, and they've got wrestling on, and they say, sorry, bud, you got to wait a couple hours. And I thought about this, and I said,
no, not even that. They're not even at the gas station. They're not going to work until wrestling's over.
well, maybe they're at work, had a TV there. Regardless, the more I thought about this, the more I believed it. I can easily imagine this happening. So, this is all more entertaining than what happened in this match. God bless the Barbarian. He beat this guy up for about 6 hours. Occasionally, Rocky would get some offense. Barbarian would not sell it. It went on and on and on. And Barbarian finally won with the power slam and the diving headbutt.
I have nothing to add. Rocky had a lot of bad ideas here. I'll top wrist lock the Barbarian. I'll slam the Barbarian.
I'll headbutt the Barbarian.
Yeah.
Hurt his own head.
Worked.
That one Ric Flair video aired.
Yeah.
He had Bob Caudle interviewing Ronnie Garvin. Do you remember, Brian, earlier in this show when I said Jimmy Garvin should just cut promos for everybody?
I do.
Exhibit A.
This wasn't that bad.
Wasn't that good?
It was all right.
Ronnie was trying to be ultra serious. I'm not out here laughing, he says. I know Ric Flair's in trouble. I've got his number, and then he moved on. He lost his train of thought a few times. He warned the girls who wanted to ride Space Mountain they better ride it soon because he was going to close it down. And at that point, they just cut him off mid-sentence.
He said his dream was about to come true. His country was built on hard work. He's worked hard his entire life. He's about to collect. Flair's a great wrestler, but he's better. He has that extra 6 miles in him, but Flair does not. And he doesn't care when it happens, but it's going to be soon. That was all right. It was not a, man, this guy's the next world champion caliber promo, but
it was on
hideous.
the low end of Ronnie Garvin promos.
Well, that's true.
Denny Brown versus Mike Jackson. Within 15 seconds, Mike Jackson was head and shoulders above every other wrestler on the show. And we talk all the time about how great Mike Jackson is, but it's true. He was great.
Dude, this guy was so great that he had a good match with Denny Brown. Now, granted, Denny Brown was not horrible, but how many great Denny Brown matches have we seen on this show?
One, and it was this one.
Yeah, this was a really, really fun match. They went at a rapid pace.
Yes.
I mean, this was not, let's slow, I mean, they had a couple of holds, but they were just moving. Somebody needs to make me a comp of Mike Jackson Ric Flair matches, because I'll bet those matches were unbelievable.
We saw one, and it was.
And it was great.
It was awesome. Now, the funny thing about this way funny thing about the way this match was put together, Denny had the heat on him for most of it. And it was one of those matches where the guy is beating him, but he just can't quite finish him off. So Jackson kicks out of a bunch of big moves, kicks out of like a top rope knee drop. And you just can't beat this fucker. And you're just waiting for Mike to hook a sleeper or a cradle or something and get the flash win and get in and escape. And then Mike Jackson hits a back suplex. Both their shoulders are down. Denny gets his shoulder up and Mike doesn't. So after all this action, where Mike Jackson can't be beat, and can't be beat, and can't be beat, he effectively pins himself.
We just saw something similar on Nitro with British Bulldog and Davey Boy Smith. Or no, Alex Wright and Davey Boy Smith.
Yes.
It sucked there, too.
I think it sucked more there, but this did suck.
It sucked more on Nitro, that's true.
Yeah.
But this did suck because, like, Denny Brown forgot he was supposed to get his shoulder up and the ref had to help him.
Well, that's... Yeah. Sean Royal versus Larry Stevens.
Sean Royal had such a weird, lanky body.
He's got a big frame, but not big muscles.
Yeah, he's got
his-
really skinny
His
lats.
shoulders are broad, but he's got no back muscles, and his arms are long and skinny, and his legs are long and skinny. He's a weird-looking dude. He's got Stevens down in a half Nelson, and the way this was done and shot, we all had no option but to... The camera had no option but to zoom in on Stevens' pale, hairy fat rolls. That was unfortunate. So they did some stuff, and Royal hit a snap suplex and a top rope knee drop for the win.
Tony in this match said we were going to talk to Sean Royal next, and I thought, how disrespectful to Larry Stevens. This man has no chance of winning.
No.
I mean, he didn't. Royal should have gone out there and just invented all sorts of weird, wacky moves.
From the future.
And yeah, just explain one of these days, you'll understand this move.
You should have done Ginger's hold.
Yeah, just all sorts of weird shit.
So they go to break, and they come back, and...
I mean, you could never prove him wrong.
No.
Because the future could be 100 years from now.
Sure. Who knows where the grappling arts will be by then. So Royal's out there to cut a promo after the break.
Oh, God.
And I always think, oh no, because these are always... He was always doing something stupid that's supposed to be funny and is painfully unfunny. He didn't do that this week. He found a new way to be terrible. He says, I've been out here. You've all been asking where Chris Champion is. It's time for me to come clean about where Chris Champion is. The truth is...
Takes off his sunglasses.
Takes off his sunglasses so you know it's a shoot. He says the new breed was in a car accident. We were in an antique 1987 automobile.
An antique.
Yeah, because they're from the future. We never should have been in that car. But we were in a fatal accident and Chris Champion was hurt.
So they killed the other people?
He sat up and said, what?
Because, I mean,
Wait,
you're alive.
Hang on.
The other guy's alive.
Yeah.
So if this was a fatal accident, this had to be a two-car accident, and the other people are dead.
So, yeah.
That's terrible.
He says, he goes on to plug that in 4 weeks, Chris Champion is going to return. So he's fine. What the fuck happened to the other people? Who's dead?
Well, they're dead. I mean, that's what happened.
Should I not care? Because I kind of do. I'm kind of upset now that you told me that someone died in this crash.
Maybe he didn't mean to say fatal, but it just came out.
This came off as more than a little tasteless. So he finishes. They don't even end the segment as he leaves and Dylan walks in. I love hypocritical heels. JJ is outraged of the finish to the Tully Blanchard Nikita Koloff match, as you were.
He's right.
But in his mind, how dare you, Nikita Koloff? How dare you steal a weapon from the longest reigning TV champion of all time? Because if you're a long reigning champion, the longer your reign is, the more you are allowed to cheat to retain your title, apparently.
Sure.
That's how it works with the Horseman.
Yeah, don't steal that guy's gimmick.
He had earned the right to break the rules. Now he promises, says he admits this is an adverse situation. There's two things you can do when you're under adversity. You can fold or you can come back stronger than ever. And with that, he introduced a video. It was the Rock and Roll Express winning a squash match with a double dropkick. And as soon as the ref counted at 3, there's Tully and Arn to beat their ass. They lay Ricky out with an assisted gourd buster. Robert chases them away with a chair. They go back to the studio where Dylan says the Rock and Rolls have been put on notice, and soon the Horsemen are going to have all the belts. We had Rage and Bull versus Ricky Nelson, who was not the 1950s teen idol.
No.
But
Actually, he may have been. He was a tiny, tiny little man.
I was looking at it. He was lean, so he had like muscles, but he was skinny.
And small. He was way shorter than the Raging Bull.
Bull had, who's not super tall. Bull had complete disdain for this fella. No interest in selling for him or putting him over in any way, and so he didn't. He no-sold some offense, beat him up for a while, and won with a flying burrito.
So he's a bad idea to look at Wikipedia. They claim he's 6'1", so it's bullshit. So he's probably 5'10". So this poor little fool, as Vinny said.
That's right.
Probably what, 5'7"?
About there.
God, he looks way shorter than me.
he was at least as short as you and way skinnier than you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He got killed. The flying burrito finish.
He did not survive the flying burrito. And then it was time for the real main event.
I had been waiting all show for something great. Besides, I had a couple of good matches.
Besides Boogie Woogie.
I was looking for something. And I was thinking during the show, like, what's going on with the show? Because, there was a match with the ball bearing. And at the very end of the match, you just see Paul Jones on the outside. And this is what I wrote. I said, so many guys just existing on this show. What's up with Paul Jones? What's Barbarian been up to other than this? Why should I be interested in this match? Well, Paul Jones showed up at the end of the show to answer all my questions. He says, I haven't been around for a while. I've been regrouping. I got a friend on the West Coast who contacted me. He says he's got a man for me. A man who's been hurting everybody out there in the West. He's going to show up here in a few weeks, and my army will be completed.
My army will be complete.
Yes. Let me talk about my army, Paul Jones says. Raging Bull. Ivan Koloff.
It went like that, too.
Can't remember his fucking army.
He's got 3 dudes. He forgot 2 of them.
He thinks for a long time and then says, I swear to God, he says, ball bearing.
Yeah.
Is it that hard to say barbarian? And he says, my new surprise. And I understand I haven't seen him. What? You don't even know who it is? You don't know who your surprise man is that's coming from the West?
Paul Jones signed someone to his army sight unseen.
Dude, sight unseen. He doesn't know the guy's name. All he knows is this guy's been running roughshod in the West. And now he's going to be in his army. And he's going to complete it.
Oh, God.
He's going to show up at the studio, he says, and clean house.
That's right.
He's a janitor. Suffered a lot of blows in the past, he says, but all them big stars are going to be biting the dust. They're not going to be saying, the Weasel's here. They're going to say, Mr. Jones is here. He says the idiots in the studio don't mean a thing to him. The most important thing in his army is his army. They're going to get him, and that's all that matters. I tried to be as bad as Paul Jones. I couldn't pull it off even when I really screwed up.
He's so great at being so terrible.
Oh, it's amazing.
It's perfect.
This was the most incredible promo. And I swear to God, his exact words, I swear to God, he said, and I understand I haven't seen him. Like someone had to clue him in that he hadn't seen him yet.
Yes.
As I understand it, I haven't seen him.
He was more than a little flustered here. He was very confused about who was and was not in his army and who would and would not be joining soon. But he just powered through.
He's darting from side to side. Where the fuck is the camera at? God damn it.
It's so perfect. It's so perfect because this show has J.J. Dillon to be a serious heel manager. It has Jim Cornette to be an entertaining but still dangerous heel manager. It's just fine that Paul Jones is a total goof at the bottom of the card.
I love him.
Absolutely perfect.
He's great. He's wondrous. He's so horrible.
He is.
He's the perfect manager for this army of numbskulls. Raging Bull, Ivan Koloff, the ball bearing, and a mystery man who he understands he hasn't seen yet.
Right.
But goddamn it, he's going to be here soon. I cannot wait. What happened to Tijo Khan?
Don't know.
He just discarded
What
his
happened
services?
to the Baron?
Yeah, that's right, the Baron. Where's the Baron?
Perhaps when he was forgetting to name people in his army, he literally forgot to name people
I think
in
he
his
forgot
army.
to name like half of his army.
That's probably true.
That's all I can come up with. Well, there you go, everybody. That's the show. A real humdinger of an NWA World Championship
I can't
Wrestling.
argue with that.